Welcome to the Captain's Cup. I am Blackbard Pirate, and I'm joined by a whole host of talent, new and old, to start off our feeder rounds for this week. We have a ton of teams competing for the last couple slots for our group stage. I am currently joined by Dirk Statel and Ashley Trainer. Ashley, how are you doing today?
I'm good, thank you. I'm happy to be here. We're going through a bit of a nightmare with scheduling here, but it's all good.
Oh, don't spoil that too soon. We'll talk about that in just a little minute here coming up here. But Dirk, are you ready for some super awesome 6v6 action today?
I'm super hyped. I've been waiting for this for a while now. I'm just doing the casting and commentating this time around, which is a bit of a different take on my involvement in tournaments. But yeah, super hyped to see some explosions at some point.
Yeah, it's so I guess it's kind of been hinted at a little bit, but we've had a couple teams decide that the last minute is the ideal time to decide to drop out. So I guess at the end of the day, that is what happens. So we did get pushed back a little bit late right now, and we're kind of frantically trying to set up a little match just to keep things going. But this does actually give me an opportunity to ask Dirk actually a couple questions here. So you'll probably know this more than me, but because you're sort of a major player for the Anger games. But has there ever been a 6v6 Eve tournament?
I'm not aware of anything that has ever taken place on this kind of scale, or at least not officially. Obviously, we had the 5v5s that were run by Jeronica a couple of years back. A lot of people miss those. Then with the Anger games, we do 7v7. Which is a bit of an interesting balance between those 5v5s and the 10s that we normally see for the Alliance tournament. The Alliance tournament, of course, has seen multiple different formats over the years. You know, there were points where it was 12v12, or I think 1 year at least it was like 15v15 or something silly like that. And the last few years it's been that 10v10. So I think this is kind of new, but also quite similar to some of the stuff that we've seen before. Jin'taan historically previously ran the Streamfleet Invitationals, which some people may remember, some people may not. They had a very similar format to this, and I'm sure we can get into some of the more detailed parts of what's going on. But yeah, I think this is the first time we've seen 6v6 in such a major format.
Yeah, it is pretty exciting. We don't see this specific thing all that much. For those of you who are just tuning in and haven't really paid attention to what's been going on with this is actually a pretty much completely player-run tournament here. CCP is absolutely letting us use Thunderdome. They're doing some assistance, but other than that, we're kind of just, making it happen, sort of in the same way the Anger games, which is really cool. Ashy, so have you... Are you willing to do an elevator pitch of the rules here real quick, just to kind of keep us updated on it?
Yeah, so they're very, very similar rules to what you would normally see in the AT, in which technically every ship has got a point value, except here what we've done is we've got that 6v6 format where the teams are actually locked into a set selection of ships per position on each side. So the first position is a T1 battleship, so you're talking your regular APOC, Armageddon, Maelstrom, nothing like a Vindicator though. Then we move into a battle cruiser of some kind, T1 or Navy, a T1 Navy or Pirate or E-War cruiser, a Logic cruiser. Everyone has to have a Logic cruiser. Doesn't mean it has to have reps. We've then got a destroyer position and an assault frigate or E-War frigate, or actually any frigate really position as well. And this is actually really interesting because it limits players, it limits teams in a very specific way, but it also means that you've got a lot of flexibility in how you surprise your opponent. You can run the aforementioned Logi, for example, without reps. Maybe tackle someone with your Logi, they're not going to expect that.
That is a super interesting thing. It is something we could end up seeing here. Generally, we don't really know what the meta is going to be until we see at least a couple matches. But since you did speak about making some tackle logistics, is that something you might think you're going to see? Like, what kind of setups do you think we might see in this tournament?
So I think we're going to see a lot of usage of ECM and damps really here, given that we've got so few ships on each side. If you field a Keres or a Celestis, so ships that have got really, really strong damps, since we can use scripts in this tournament, you can have one Celestis or one Keres lock down the entire enemy team. Likewise, we may see a Scorpion show up just because, again, it's got 8 mid slots. You could have 8 jams. Not that you would, but you could, again, stop the enemy team from doing really anything at all. There's plenty of room here, though, for your classic rush or for heavy armor style formats. But ECM and EWAR is probably on the forefront of everyone's minds.
Yeah, and Dirk, what do you think about these rules and sort of the setups that we might end up seeing?
I think it's actually a really interesting take on rule sets and the way ships are pointed and positioned. In the Angie games in the Alliance tournament, typically you see teams get 100 points and every ship has a specific value, and up to your limit of number of players, you can pick any ships that fit in within that 100-point limit. You know, you could pick 4 battleships for 100 points if you really wanted to, and only field 4 players. Whereas in this, you've got this very much locked-in kind of format with the battleship, with the T1 or the Navy battlecruiser, with the destroyers and the logistics frigates only, logistics cruisers, only being T1. So it does simplify things a little bit in terms of the theory crafting. You know that you're theory crafting for a battleship and a battlecruiser and a logistics cruiser and so on. It hopefully will make it a lot easier for some teams to get into this, because that theory crafting and that composition creation step is quite critical in other tournaments. But yeah, I think generally, otherwise the rules are fairly similar to what we see in other tournaments. You know, we've got those T1, T2 modules being allowed except certain things. We see command bursts being allowed with some banning of implants. Much like in the Anger Games, Jin'taan here in the Captain's Cup has banned mind links, so we will not be seeing fully full strength boosts coming along here. I think it's going to be very interesting. I'm really looking forward to seeing how teams will approach this.
Yeah, it definitely should be interesting. Like I said, we haven't really seen this specific rule set done. Tech 2 drones are allowed as well, which is something that's been on and off in the last couple years for tournament stuff. But I think a really interesting point about this is actually the first tournament that the new Navy battlecruisers have been allowed. So I guess we might get to see how those perform in a tournament setting, which we have not been able to do before. Ashley, do you have a specific Navy battlecruiser you think is going to be amazing? Do you think all of them are going to be amazing?
I think you know what I'm going to say, and I think it's the Myrmidon Navy issue that I really, really want to see on grid. If anyone doesn't know, the Myrmidon Navy issue has a bonus to web drones. You can get effectively a 90% web anywhere you want it in the arena. That said, I do think that the Ferox Navy issue is more likely to show up in a shield team. It is effectively a Brutix Navy issue with a few quirks. It's got a tracking bonus to rails, but it has quite a nice shield tank. Prophecy Navy is another very, very strong one that we're probably going to see here. If anyone's going to be running any kind of heavy armor team with an Abaddon in there, they're probably going to drop a Prophecy Navy in a shoe in as well. It's got something like 200k EHP, depending on how you fit it, with great range and great drones too. So they are very, very powerful. Looking forward to seeing how they perform.
Excellent. And just for the viewers' information, the next match, which was going to be Simulate Your .Sinses versus Is That Man Riding a Shrimp, is not going to actually be happening, as Sinses decided that they could only field 2 people in a 6v6 tournament. However, we are setting up a show match, which should happen in probably the next few minutes here, just to make sure that we get some explosions going on. And I think it'll be interesting because we'll be able to sort of get a little bit of a taste of what this might end up looking like. We do have some bans in. What we're doing is we're using the bans that were submitted for the show match. Now, again, this will be a show match. Win or lose, it doesn't really matter that much, other than the fact that we get to see spaceship explosions. For the purposes of this, obviously, is that man riding a shrimp, which I believe is Brave Collective, will be moving on in the tournament. However, the bans ended up being, let me pull them up real quick. There. Aha. So we had the Scorpion, the Sentinel, the Carries band by Sins, and we had the Hyena, the Carries, and the Gila band. So I believe that we already talked a little bit about how good damps are probably going to be, but are any of these bands really sticking out to you right now?
So who's that question at?
Whoever wants to answer it. Sorry, my bad.
So I'll take that then. So the Keres is the obvious ban. It's going to be that ship that's very, very hard to hit, and when it damps you out down to 20-kilometer lock range and it's sitting out at 70 kilometers, there is nothing you can do about that. I am surprised that they're banning that and not the Celestis, though. If you're particularly afraid of the damps, maybe you want to shut down both of those. And the only one that stands out in there is really the Gila, which perhaps we'll see it strong in this format, but in my opinion, I'm not sure that it works as well on its own without a full drone comp to go with it.
That is fair. And while I would absolutely 100% love nothing more than to get your opinion on this, Dirk, our two teams have actually just started warping in for our show match. And this show match is going to be between, it is still going to be between Braves. So that's pretty cool. And then I believe that it's between the Curse local Fauna group. So they'll be playing again later this day as well. But do we have any predictions on who's going to be winning between the Is That Man Riding a Shrimp team and Curse Local Fauna from you, Dirk?
I mean, we have this little bit of a glance at what they've got on grid here. I'm going to go with taking a quick look at the ships and the stuff in use. I actually think we're going to be seeing our red team win, which is Asarkada's Curse Local Fauna.
Awesome. All right. And I did just get one quick little information. We are ignoring the ban, so when you see the hyena, please don't yell at me. And other than that, I think we can probably move to the arena now.
Brave finally taking some damage. It looks like he's tackled right now, but I think it'll be a little bit too little too late. This Osprey has a lot of support from the rest of his team, and there's just not a whole lot of damage left on the Brave side.
Yes, I don't know what they could have really changed it. It looks like they just got projected really quickly and lost, well, one ship after another. They are putting some damage down on the Hyena, which could actually start bringing it back towards them, as the Hyena is providing a lot of application bonuses. But he is doing quite well. The Osprey's keeping him alive. He's even got rep drones just to make sure. So unless they get a lucky shot, I suspect Star Melnick and the Hyena will survive, as the Tempest of Dujek has now decided to primary him now.
Yeah, and meanwhile, Dujek, I mean, he's currently being webbed down as well by, it looks like this Ferox Navy, or excuse me, Scram down, as the other Tempest starts moving in, and we now have some Tempest on Tempest action as Dujek has finally gotten right on top of Necrox, but unfortunately, Dujek goes down, Necrox will stay alive, and he's still got his Logi. This Osprey staying alive, might be living to win at the moment, about to dip into armor, but there's not a whole lot of damage left on him right now, just this Prophecy Navy, realistically, and Xandar Valley now moving into low armor as well.
Yep, they'll probably get the Prophecy now, but it's going to be unfortunately too late for them. And also, hello guys, you can hear us now. I had a really awesome intro, but you definitely didn't hear it. Hey, they got the Osprey though. It is not a clean sweep.
It is not. I mean, it's just unfortunate the way it goes. You got something more kitey with the 50-kilometer range on the, or 50-kilometer warp ends coming in from Curse. With that Tempest, and then using the shield kite to their advantage. Meanwhile, Brave bringing something a little bit more brawly didn't really work out for them. They weren't able to catch anything. The Draugr melted, as did the Augur, and with that, they're able to trade the Hyena at the very least on top of this Osprey, but they will end up losing this Ash Moon Retribution, as there isn't anything keeping them alive, and neither of those ships have a whole lot of damage to do anything else to this Cursed team.
Yeah, it's the age-old game of shield brings damage but lacks tackle, and obviously armor brings tank but no damage as well. So it's good to see that the age-old Eve play continuing on, with shield bringing all the damage in the world and armor trying its best to hold and, well, not being able to do much else. As, Retri goes down, Ashima getting dive killed.
Fortunately for me, as someone who is definitely not biased towards the Brave team, this is a show match, and Brave is still moving on in the tournament. But we'll see. I mean, obviously, because it's a show match, neither of these teams is really going to bring something that they think is going to give away a whole lot of information to teams that they're facing later in the tournament. So maybe Brave brought something they thought was a weaker comp. Maybe it was the same deal for
sure don't
here.
worry, we believe you, Fear, don't worry.
Yeah. Anyway, we're gonna send it back to the desk to get us ready for the next match, and with that we'll see you right after this.
Awesome. So again, that was a show match, which means the teams are still moving on, but we did get a little bit of a taste of what is going to be happening in this. And so, Dirk, kind of walk me through what Brave brought there.
Yeah, so Brave, which is wee man riding a shrimp or something, right? They brought this Tempest armor comp with that. They had a Retribution in there. They had an Ashimu in there. I missed the first couple of losses, but I think they also had a they had a Prophecy of some sort in there as well, if memory serves, along with that Executor for Logi, and it was very much a comp that was designed to send in tackle, get those ships locked down, those shield ships locked down, and then basically just try and push into them. Whereas the shield side of that was very much more about sustaining, basically, with that Osprey rep. The Osprey, a very powerful shield rep for a T1 ship. And so, yeah, Jin just posting... Oh, there wasn't a Prophecy in there, as far as like... No, there was a Navy Prophecy. Cool. Memory is kind of working, guys.
It's all good.
So yeah, anyway, they were really trying to move in those smaller ships, that Ashimu, that Retribution, get something locked down, and then be able to move in and really pummel it with that slightly more short range damage. It didn't seem to quite work for them, though.
No, it didn't. And Ashy, so we saw that the Cursed people decided to bring a shield setup, and I think generally we know that shield ships usually have a little bit higher damage, but do you think that this was like a shield versus armor thing, or it just was maybe an execution thing?
I think this is definitely a shield versus armor thing, as well as a bit of comp choice in general. So the shrimp guys, the brave side here, they brought the Tempest, Navy Prophecy, Ashamu, the Augur, I think it was, Drauga, and Retri. A team very much intended to come and grind you down with those newts, with okay damage and with a big tank to keep yourselves alive. What they fell prey to, however, was the sheer amount of DPS on the red side there. So the other guys had a Tempest, Navy Execura, which has a stupid amount of damage, Navy Ferox, which also has a lot of damage and a tracking bonus, an Osprey for Logi, a Hyena to help that tracking even more, and a Jackdaw to just consistently put out damage and make the Logi day really hard. And yeah, what we're seeing here, I mean, if you look at the Execura Navy issue, it does something like 700-800 DPS, even with railguns. And those can go out to 40-50 kilometers quite easily. The Ferox, while it doesn't have an optimal range bonus, I don't believe, in the Navy variant, it still hits out very far. They're just projecting damage right from the start of the match, wherever they want it on grid, with the assistance of that Hyena. And unless Brave could have got right on top and started grinding down, maybe try and turn the Ferox's guns off, I'm not sure there was a huge amount they could have done with that.
Yeah, it was a pretty interesting stomp on that side. And again, just to reiterate, it was a show match. Brave, or also known as Is That Man Riding a Shrimp, is still going to be moving on, and we will also be studying Curse Local Fauna later today. However, now that we have made it past that little bit of impromptu entertainment, we will actually be seeing the next match at 1850 of Lazy Piglets versus Of Essence. And we do have the bans in for both of these teams at this point. So just going to go over them real quickly. Lazy Piglets has banned the Carries, the Hyena, and the Gila. And Of Essence has banned the Dominix, the Armageddon, and the Hyena. So we're seeing a little bit of a different ban strategy here. Dirk, can you sort of maybe go over it? Tell us what you're thinking you're going to see here.
Well, I think the bans that we're seeing from Lazy Piglets here, that Carries, Hyena, Gila ban, they're all very strong ships. The Carries with the damps, you definitely don't want to be seeing those damps. The Hyena with that long web to get damage in right from the start if something can get tackled from halfway across the arena. You don't want to be seeing that. And the Healer is just very strong. It's got that mix of very decent tank. It's reasonably fast. It's got the rapid light missiles. And of course, those drones. 2 medium drones at the damage of a full set of 5 medium drones, plus a bit extra. And you've got 10 of them. So you're never going to run out of drones in this kind of 10-minute format. On the Of Essence side, where we've got the Dominix, the Armageddon, the Hyena, again, that Hyena ban, you don't want to be seeing those webs. The Dominix and the Armageddon, I think, are interesting, though, because in these sorts of formats, you will generally see them used a bit more for control, in my experience, right? The Armageddon with that powerful new bonus. And the Dominix with those mid-slots and again, you can fit it with newts and just run drones with that Dominix. These are both kind of control-y style battleships. So I think what we're seeing here is teams trying to restrict the amount of control their opponents can exert on them, and really just be able to potentially brawl it out. I think it'll be interesting to see what they come up with here. I'm not sure what I would expect to see though.
Yeah, it does seem that there's a lot of sort of drone ban here, but just real quick, Ashy, we're seeing that one team is banning like the bottom end, and the other team is going after battleship bans, and sort of like, what does that say to you? Just maybe in 60 seconds or less.
Yeah, so it seems like by banning the top end, you're cutting the head off of a strategy that your opponent might have. You could build an entire fleet, entire comp around the Armageddon, like you could with most of the rest of the battleships. Likewise, perhaps with the battle cruisers as well, you could build your comp around it, but the battleship is going to be the powerhouse in many of these teams in this particular format. And if you can play this ban mind game and you can stop your opponent's strategy before it ever hits the field, you can have a massive advantage right from the get-go. When you're banning the lower end, you're typically banning things that you're a little bit afraid of, like the Keres, as we've already mentioned. Like the Gila, not really sure I'd call the Gila low end, but it's a powerful ship nonetheless. And the Hyena is another linchpin, although it's not in the same way that a battleship is. So I think they're smart bans, but just two slightly different strategies.
Absolutely, and both teams are actually in system now, and they should be warping into the arena soon. So very soon we will have more spaceship explosions, which is always a good thing. We'll get some predictions real quick here. Dirk, looking at the bans and maybe possibly peeking behind the curtain there, who are you thinking is going to take this, Lazy Piglets or Of Essence?
I'm gonna go with this on the basis of the bans and what we're seeing from the captains of these teams, which we haven't really touched on. I'm gonna go Lazy Piglets.
Awesome. And Ashy, what is your prediction here?
Yeah, I'm gonna say Lazy Piglets as well. I think banning the smaller but more impactful ships speaks for a bit of a maybe a smarter decision sometimes.
All right. And I'm going to wait like 3 seconds here until they land and choose mine by being a dirty cheater there. But I'm thinking that Of Essence is going to win because they are bringing something really interesting. And I'm going to actually send this over to our casters, Fear and Wingnut, so that they can talk about it more.
Welcome back to the arena. My name is Fear, joined by the one and only Wingnut. And we've got a Raven, which is one of my favorite ships in the game, versus a Scorpion, which is one of my least favorite ships in the game.
Have you checked the Raven's weapons?
It's
a torpedo Raven.
Oh boy.
I brought them their torpedoes to this battle. This is gonna be exciting.
So that Scorpion is going to absolutely melt because you're like, oh, okay, they both 20-kilometer warp versus 30-kilometer warp. No, the Raven has a range bonus, so those torps are going to hit onto the Scorpion. They're going to hit pretty hard. The match is now starting, and with this taunt comp, this is something that we were talking about a little bit before everything started today. Is every tournament, we're going to see some sort of Scorpion Blackbird comp. This time around, they brought a Vigilant instead of a Blackbird, taking advantage of the fact that they can bring a pirate cruiser. I know you're a very big fan of the Serpentis ships yourself, but as you see the damage going out, this Scorpion already dipping in armor in just a couple seconds here.
Yeah, so quick note as well is the Scorpion has 0 guns. So this is a full taunt tank Scorpion. He's just going to try his best to hold as long as he can, annoy the enemy team, and pray that the Brutix, Navy, and Vigi can run around murdering stuff. At the moment, it looks like, I'm just double-checking where they are. Yeah, it looks like they've got a Osprey Navy tackled at the moment, so they're trying to kill that off. And you can see Vigilant and Brutix Navy currently just pounding upon it. However, the Osprey Navy is actually quite a tanky ship. It has a surprising amount of mids. It is quite resistant. So they're going to have trouble killing that with an Osprey repping it. So maybe not the best call here, where the Osprey is actually on its own too. Yeah, but the Scorpion is getting chugged.
Yeah, the Osprey's able to rep it, but also you've got an ancillary shield booster on most Osprey Navy issues, so he's got that extra bit of burst tank available to him. The Scorpion, though, completely melting as the XLASB charges seem to have fallen off for the Osprey Navy issue, so this will be a trade between a faction cruiser and a Type 1 battleship very quickly, but this Osprey Navy issue will go down first. He's already in the hull, and just like that, I mean, so much damage comes up from Vigilant and Brutix Navy issue, right? But the Scorpion now diving in a hull himself.
It could maybe, if they get enough reps on this exec, if the exec heats reps for long enough, they could buy the extra bit of time, but Question's going to be what they're going to go for next with this Vigilant and Brutix Navy combo. Let's have a look. Seeing them rush in. What are they going for? Looks like, I think Cyclone Fleet is their next target. So it looks like they're going to try and go for the next ship. But honestly, they're leaving the Logi alone. I guess they think they can rip through it. And the Scorpion is still alive, but he's about to die. He's going. See you later, mate.
Yeah, Cyclone Navy issue, unlike its Tech 1 counterpart, doesn't have a rep bonus, which does feel a little bit bad. The rep bonus from Cyclone went on to the Ferox Navy issue with the new ships. But the Cyclone Fleet issue, still fairly high damage ship, fairly tanky, and we are seeing him live through the Scorpion reps as the Exec now getting melted by these torpedoes from the Raven. With the Exec going down, they're going to be able to turn on the Brutix Navy issue and the Vigilant, and the Cyclone Fleet issue right now, currently sitting around half shields, and he's able to get back up to 2/3 right now. They just don't have a whole lot of damage to get through the Cyclone Fleet issue right now, even with the Blaster Vigilant and Brutix Navy.
I'm just having a look around at the moment. I'm looking at the Raven. I haven't seen any shield hardener effects. Mirashiv is known for some weird fits. He is a guy who thinks outside the box. I want to believe beyond all hope that is a polarized Raven. It's not, but I want to dream of it because that would seem like a crazy way to do it.
I'm fairly certain the only polarized. The only polarized ships you ever want to run in a tournament are a polarized ANI, and that's pretty much it.
Nope.
Torp's going on to this Brutix Navy now.
Nah, come on, mate. You think you're too far inside the box there. But either way, the Brutix Navy is now being painted. I'm hoping it's a hull tank, but it looks like he's got armor because, of course, his comp was armor. And they cannot break Jason Osrin here. They're just, fortunately, his lordship is still too strong, and he cannot be killed. I think, honestly, leaving that Osprey alive and going for the Osprey Navy, while potentially a good kill to kill off DPS, the fact that they then try to do it twice is kind of cost them here.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit unfortunate, but with that, they are going to eventually lose this one, 5 ships to 0. Karuk got a little bit of bleed into the hull. He's getting some reps back up on his local rep. But eventually he's going to round on a nanite on his Ansel and then just be taken down. I think the Raven might be on reload right now, and that might be why he ended up stalling for a bit. But, I mean, torpedoes, we think torpedoes only apply to battleships, and that's true with rage torpedoes, but you have to understand torpedoes apply to everything if you have enough paints on it, and I assume Mira's got at least one paint on this Raven, if not multiple. Fortunately, we can't see fancy UI because of how tournament system works. So if there is a paint going out, we actually can't see the effect. But
there is a paint, but it's not
from
him. It's from the Stork. What? The Stork is painting the target.
Okay. Otherwise, Sentinel goes down, and now it's just the Vigilant and the Pontifex, and there's not a whole lot left for of Essence to do right now.
Yeah, the Brutix Navy tried to go chase down the Osprey, hence why he was losing some damage on him. But unfortunately, he got held down by the Cyclone Fleet, which is a bloody fast ship. It's honestly a really good ship at times.
It's a bloody fast ship, and it's also, kind of... I find it really interesting because it's kind of the analog to... Instead of being an analog to a Cyclone, it's more of an analog to a Nighthawk, just without the massive resists that a Nighthawk gets. Right? It's just you've got so much damage with heavy assault missiles and HMLs. I actually haven't taken a look at the model. We'll see what he's got on it. I assume hams. Yeah, those are hams. So you've got a whole lot of damage ripping in this Vigilant that's going to apply to it perfectly. You've got a Raven moving in right now with the Torps, and this Vigilant not going to be long for the world.
Yeah, I think I swear I've been seeing dams from the Vigi, but I think I'm just going crazy. But yeah, Vigi's gonna go pop, leaves him with the Pontifex. Well flown by lazy Piglets here. They lost the Navy Osprey, but bringing the Torp Raven, I love it. I love it to bits, and I'm hoping it has like no tank because I haven't seen a single shield hardener module yet. So I'm hoping this is just like a full balls deep, max DPS, max application Raven. Congratulations, lazy Piglets. Thank you for the great match. I'm gonna go back to the studio to see what they think.
Well, that was definitely interesting. We saw a Torp Raven and a Armor 0 DPS Scorpion, and I think that I know I definitely have opinions on that, but I would like to first hear Ashy's opinions on that.
Okay, that Scorpion. Don't think we could see whether the CM effects were going out really from that. As we heard in the commentary, it was a bit of a bait play. They were hoping they could pop that Scorpion down on grid, have it tank for as long as it likes, while it just annoys the enemy team, and they could then send their Brutix Navy issue and their Vigilant around to kill the rest of the team. That didn't work. They spent the most of the time sitting on the Osprey Navy issue, while a Raven and a Cyclone Fleet issue core just absolutely messed up the rest of their team.
Yeah, it definitely did not go quite as planned. And Dirk, what do you think about a Torp Raven in this sort of format? Because we've seen them all throughout the years, but specifically in a 6v6, how do you feel a Torp Raven performs?
I think the 6v6 aspect is less of the key point here, and more of the point is that you know in this format that you are going to see a battleship, a battle cruiser, 2 cruisers before you even see a destroyer or a frigate, right? And so in that sort of mindset, you know that you're going to have at least 2 ships that you will be able to apply to relatively easily in that battleship and that battle cruiser. And then with the right support, with the right tackle, you'll still be able to apply relatively okay to those cruisers and lay down some damage. Once you combine that with that Ham Fleet Cyclone, the rapid lights of the Navy Osprey, that's a lot of damage that you can be putting down across the entire top end of your opponent's team. And then when you see a no-gun Scorpion come up against your Torpedo Raven, you've got to just think that is like a present. Because you're going to be putting out a ton of damage on their battleship. You're not going to be seeing much damage in return. Fantastic choice in this particular scenario. Would it have gone quite so well against something running potentially rapid heavies? I'm not so sure, but definitely a good choice in this scenario.
Yeah, it definitely was interesting. I think that this is on Thunderdome for those of you who don't know, which means we do not get to see the ship kill mails unless we get them specifically linked to us. That being said, we can use our super awesome high-powered analysis powers to look and figure that it was probably a full Newt Scorpion in addition to being a full jam. Like Dirk said, kind of looks like a present to you, especially if you are doing some kind of high DPS, specifically like a Torp Raven setup. There's actually a couple other interesting things that happened in that match that I'd sort of like to talk about. I believe that both the Vigilant and the Brutix Navy issue were blasters. How do you feel about blasters in pretty much any setting, Ashy?
They are a lot worse than a lot of people think. People see the big numbers, they think, oh, blaster damage, I'm just going to melt something. And sometimes that can happen. But most of the time, what's going to happen is you're going to tunnel vision on a target. You're going to see another target 10 kilometers away. And 10 kilometers is not that far. But you're going to be thinking, oh, God, no, I can't reach that. I'm scrammed. My blasters can't reach 10 kilometers. So you end up tunnel visioning onto one target while it doesn't break, and that can cost you an entire match. And something we did see here was we saw at one point with the Brutix Navy issue and the Vigilant, we're just in no man's land without a target, burning around. Not a problem at all that the Raven would have had. The Raven with torpedoes can apply to, like you said earlier, the entire top end. It does that out to 45 kilometers with Rage, or I think about 60-ish kilometers with Caldari Navy, so it's got no problems at all. And well, blasters can work, but big number doesn't make it good.
Just to jump in on that something I do want to point out is that we saw the Navy Brutix and the Vigilant work really well in the initial seconds of the match when they jumped on that Navy Osprey and managed to kill it. But then they lost the Scorpion, and then their Executor was starting to take damage, and their Executor went down, and they were stuck on that Fleet Cyclone because, as she says, they've got just that terrible, terrible range. And the Osprey was away, like 30 kilometers away from them. There was no way that they could switch to do a Logi trade, and everything just snowballed from there.
Yeah, it was interesting. We did see the Vigilant at the last minute or so finally break loose from... well, let me rephrase. They didn't break loose because there actually wasn't really any tackle on the the Essence's team, or not the Essence's team, the Brutix Navy issue and the Vigilant weren't actually tackled. So at some point, the Vigilant pilot decided, oh, maybe I should go get this Osprey, and the Osprey actually kited out the Vigilant for probably a good 2 minutes. For those of us who are AT enjoyers in the past, I believe that the Osprey pilot was actually piloted by Hydra Reloaded / Truth Honor Lights, one of their main Logi pilots. So kind of would expect some pretty good piloting from that person since they have won the last 2 ATs. But another much more interesting thing than any analysis we can do is we actually have gotten predictions working. So now, Twitch chat, you can use your gigantic brains, your 4 heads, your 5 heads, your 6 heads, to figure out who will actually win the match. And then after doing that, we can find out if you guys are in fact giant geniuses, or if you're just as good at this as I am. So please feel free to predict. I don't believe that you get anything besides warm fuzzies, but honestly, that's all you really need for it. Other than that, I think the last real thing I want to talk about that match is we did see a Cyclone Fleet issue. So we saw Navy battlecruisers again, and the Cyclone Fleet issue just seemed to have no issue tanking whatsoever. Was that maybe a comp issue, or are Cyclone Fleet issues actually that good, Dirk?
I think the Cyclone Fleet issue is definitely that good, but I do think that what we saw there was also a function of the of Essence team just not having that really strong DPS battleship to back them up and try and punch through kind of quickly. So I think it's a little bit of both. The Ham Fleet Cyclone, very strong, very good ship, but I think definitely there was a comp mismatch that contributed to it tanking just so well.
Excellent. Well, we do have the next match still on schedule, so in about 5 minutes, Exodus will be going up against Nerf Ansaflexes, which I feel like that is definitely a slightly controversial opinion, of which we will not ask anybody how they feel about Ansaflexes, because there are no Ansaflexes in Jove's space that I know of. We do have the bans for both of these teams out, with Exodus banning the Armageddon, the Dominics, and the Carries, and Nerf Ansaflexes have banned the Prophecy Navy issue, the Draugr, and the Jackdaw. So very, very different bans. We have already seen some sort of weird things going on, and we've only had, 3 matches now. But, Ashy, walk me through these bans a bit.
All right, so we're seeing Exodus ban the Armageddon, Dominics, and Keres. Keres, it looks like it's going to pretty much always be a ban choice by any captain. You don't want to see it. You don't want your entire team to be locked down. Armageddon, generally a good choice in a setup where you're going to expect to be neutered out and controlled by these potentially 40-ish kilometer newts, I should say. I could potentially see Exodus trying to kite this out if they're banning the Armageddon. Likewise with the Dominics, perhaps they're trying to ban that out because of the drone damage it could put on them, or because of a newt Dominics, potentially. On the Nerf Ansaflexes side, Prophecy Navy issue, Draugr, and Jackdaw have been banned. Prophecy Navy issue, I think that's a good choice. It's a very, very tanky ship, not one that you want to be stuck on. It's got a huge amount of EHP. And the other two, I'm not so sure I rate those bans. Not particularly afraid myself of a Draugr or a Jackdaw, but perhaps that messes up their game plan.
Yeah, Dirk, what do you think about the Draugr and the Jackdaw?
Jackdaw ban, definitely I'd agree. I'm not sure that a Jackdaw is worth wasting a ban on generally. It's a good ship. It's got, some decent tank, some decent ability to maneuver around the field and reach out with those light missiles. But I generally think there are things that I would be more afraid of in that destroyer slot than a Jackdaw. And certainly, I think combining 2 destroyers with that Prophecy Navy ban, possibly not the right move. On the other side, we've seen the Keres ban happen every single match so far. I think those control ships are definitely more dangerous. With that said, the Draugr, I actually feel, is underrated by a lot of people. It's got a lot of damage, it tracks very well, it moves pretty quickly, in fairness, and it's got those links to help you out with, your skirmish, your E-War resistance, all, like, both things in this format, very important to have on the field and running well. So I think the Draugr ban, actually, probably a smart move, and I think we'll see more Draugrs. We haven't seen one yet, but I think we'll see more of them as we go forward in the tournament.
Yeah, I agree with you on the Draugr ban. Not necessarily that it's the best ban, but it's definitely a good ship to ban, especially with that ramping Triglavian DPS. In a 6v6 setup, having a destroyer that can get up to like 6, 7, 800 DPS, depending on fit, is pretty dang cool. We usually only see that out of, really paper tank fit ganking ships, which, again, we can't talk about that because it's illegal nowadays. But we do have the teams in local, and they are actually warping in and landing right now. So let's get some real quick predictions between Exodus and Nerf Ansaflexes. Dirk, who do you think is going to win here?
I'm kind of just taking a quick sneaky look at what's going on grid. I think we're possibly... I want to say Exodus will win it, but I think that Nerf Ansaflexes have a stronger comp.
And Ashy, without cheating, who do you think is going to win here?
Without cheating, yeah, I'm going to say Nerf Ansaflexes, and I think the chat will see why.
Well, I'm going to go with Exodus because the chat is always correct, and they've never been wrong in their entire life. And we will be sending this to a new caster duo of Teddy and Mark Resurrectus, who are about to cast this match between Exodus and Nerf Ansaflexes.
Well, hello, fans. It's me, Mark Resurrectus. This is the Wormhole Hour now. I'm here with my very good friend, Teddy GBYC, for today's game between well-known tournament team Exodus and Brisk Rubal Appreciators Nerf Ansaflexes. Teddy, good afternoon. How are you?
I am very good. How are you?
I'm wonderful. We're getting ready to start. We've got Abaddon, Merm Navy, Stratios, Magus, Jaguar, and Augur from the Nerf team. And Typhoon, Worm, Stork, Gila, Cyclone, Fleet, and Osprey from Exodus. And we have begun.
Really want to see some Navy action. Want to get those.
I do love the Merm Navy. Yeah, do love the Merm Navy. Really strong now. One of those new ships that's came out in since the beginning of the Uprising expansion. Got a little bit of DPS coming in on the Osprey right now from Exodus, but not too much. A lot of positioning going on. We've got the Merm Navy moving in slowly, approaching. Look at this. Yes, very good.
Absolutely doing its best.
Yes, just diving. It's just diving, Ted. Og Navy from Nerf Ansaflex is taking a lot of damage right now, or rather the Augur taking a lot of damage midway through armor. Currently, the Merm Navy also taking some damage as we sit here and look at it. A lot of pressure being put on this Nerf Ansaflexes team by Exodus, which is what we expected. What we expected. Exodus, a very experienced team, a lot of action going on there from a lot of those pilots. The AUG staying up in the short term.
Doing its best to counter away.
It is doing its best, and it is pulling some range. You can see it there out of the corner of the screen. But the worm is closing in on it. It looks like they're trying to pin this one down over there in the corner by that micro jump, but he is going to pull away from there as well.
The Merm is in a risky position though, because if it does get tackled, it's got absolutely no support.
It absolutely is, and the Gila too pulling down there to support that Merm right on top of the Magus.
Although we do have the Augur going down.
Yep. The Augur, that will do it for the Nerf Ansaflexes Augur. The Merm Navy now kind of off, well, not off by himself. He has some support. He's got the Stratios nearby. He's got that Abaddon, but he is entering into armor. And he is going to be in a tough spot here as well, Ted. But we do have
all these drones starting to catch up to the Osprey occasionally.
That's true. That is true. Not too much else going on. And we really haven't seen a whole lot of pressure being put onto the Exodus team yet. We saw a little bit early on from the Osprey. We're seeing a little bit now onto the Typhoon. but the Typhoon seems like it can handle that just fine. The Merm Navy, yeah, Merm Navy is really, really, really taking it right now from the Typhoon of Radicos. And that Cyclone Fleet issue, we knew that Cyclone Fleet issue was a problem, man. The Cyclone Fleets are so good, and the Merm Navy drops just like that. That will be a problem for that
He
team.
may get a trade here with the Typhoon. He's getting chunked.
He's getting chunked. He's getting chunked. That's our boy Radicos. Radicos, a longtime tournament competitor. But at the same time, if you drop the Typhoon and lose the Merm Navy and the Stratios now in mid armor, both of these going out. Oh, and one has
boundary though.
Somebody just boundaried? What was that? Oh, it was the Osprey. Yep, that's a problem. Typhoon now. Typhoon absolutely eating shit. Look at this. Into hull. But again,
Stratios suddenly surviving though. Absolutely just being a hero.
It is. It's just holding just barely. But see there. Yeah, the Stratios is going to have some trouble here shortly. But again, I have to maintain the Typhoon looks like it's trying to rep through its shield. It's having a hard time, and they both go down simultaneously, which means we now have a 4v3. The Abaddon, Magus, and Jaguar from Nerf Ansaflexes versus the Gila.
It's been hard tackled. It's just going to get absolutely pummeled by this Abaddon here.
Yep, the Worm is sitting right on top of that Magus as well. Or the Magus, rather, sitting on top of the Worm. The Magus, though, having a rough time. I do not think it will matter here in this case because the Abaddon is right there.
The Gila and the Worm drones. The Gila and the Worm drones are going to really, really hurt that Magus and the Jag when it gets to him.
Yep. Oh my God, that was straight through armor for the Worm, and the Worm goes down. We now have Abaddon, Jaguar versus Gila, Stork, Cyclone Fleet for Exodus. The Jag now trying to get some spacing out here. He's kind of off on his own, but he's chasing some stuff down. What was that?
Jaguar just getting absolutely alphaed right there.
Yep, that was a rough one. This is tough now. I'll be honest. This is tough. This is really tough for Exodus. This is tough. I don't know where they're at on points. But that Abaddon is he's a chunky lad. He's a chunky lad. And outside of the healer does do a ton of damage. And the Cyclone Fleet is also very good. Very good. I do expect this is probably going to go to Exodus. That would be very weird if it didn't. And the Cyclone Fleet is going to have no trouble moving over there and re-engaging this Abaddon without any more support from the rest of his team. Just hanging out, spectating at this point.
Yeah, the Abaddon is going to really struggle to apply to the rest of the ships that are on this grid without any support.
Yep. I think that will do it. Unfortunately for our friends in Nerf Ansaflexes, he is going to be in a tough spot. The trade earlier that the losing the Typhoon, trading that for the Stratios and Merm Navy, I feel like was great. It was a shot that you would, I think, you would take that just about any day.
Abaddon actually just trying to wait out the time though. Being an absolute tanky boy.
He is. He was having a rough time. Chat's giving me a hard time. You're right. I was looking at the wrong side of my screen. You're right. This is not a difficult position for Exodus. Exodus is in a great spot. Absolutely with that Cyclone Fleet. Absolutely with the Gila. They have plenty of damage left on grid, even if they're going to have a long time left to chunk through the Abaddon. But they should get that done here within the remaining time in this match.
Yeah, this Abaddon just doesn't want to die. He's just got rage filled with him.
He does. He's there's not a whole lot he can do. He is TD'd and damped down to almost nothing. He's well out of range of the rest of the ships. They could really just sit here and poke at him as much as they want to without too much trouble. And I would not expect that to have any trouble at all. Yeah, really the only incoming damage at this point, Ted, are those Valkyries. We maybe a little bit from the Cyclone fleet. But again, as long as they just keep range, they should not have too much trouble here. Wrapping this up.
Yeah, a nice time victory for Exodus right here.
For sure. And we mentioned this a little bit earlier too. Exodus came in, it looks like, with a game plan. They immediately went after, they had a couple smart plays there in the middle. We've got 2 minutes now remaining in this match. Went in early on with the, against the, that AUG, clear the AUG almost immediately, even though it was able to hold up for just a little bit. Did not make too much of a difference. And then since then, it's just been one thing after another. Went after the Stratios, went after the Merm Navy, cleared them both without too much trouble at all. And now we just wait for the slow impending death of this Abaddon, whether by incoming DPS from these drones or by the inevitable creeping time that is left on his life. He does not have too much of it left, I fear.
Yeah, I do think he may actually live until the end of the match.
I think he
We
will
can
too.
only pray.
Yeah, I think he will too.
If we definitely think back to the start of that match, the Augur was just deleted. The Gila drones are just so insane to a T1 cruiser.
And what's unfortunate about this, Ted, and is really, really sad about this, is that by contractual obligations, CCP now has to buff Ansaflexes. Just the way these things go, it's unfortunate for a lot of folks. I know Gideon is going to be very, very upset about this, but that these things happen, and it's unfortunate. But 30 seconds, do they get through structure in 30 seconds? I absolutely think they will, and that will be a clean sweep. Clean sweep of the Nerf Ansaflexes team. Exodus continuing a long string of dominance back towards over many years. They've done well today. GFs in local. And what a match. What an early match. A couple early great matches early on today. We'll be back here shortly, folks, with the next match we've got between BSOD and High-Sec Miners, but we'll throw it back to the desk for our commentation and analysis.
Awesome. So we just saw Exodus, I wouldn't say handily defeat Nerf Ansaflexes, but they did definitely end up winning. Big props to Nerf Ansaflexes Abaddon for attempting to bring Solo back for almost 5 minutes there. We have a new analyst crew. We have Fear Vina, who you guys heard casting just a little bit ago, and we have Hoed Cosmere. Hoed, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you for asking.
Excellent. So let's talk about that match a little bit. So what we saw was a shield-based setup that was kind of kitey, classic Exodus, as anybody that's watched this for a while knows, going up against a very, very heavy, slow armor setup. And Hoed, kind of what were some key points of that match for you?
Honestly, I think just how quickly that Augur died. He survived the first rapid heavy missile clip, but then pretty much dropped right after. So
excellent. And we did get to see there was a point where maybe they could have pulled it out, and they maybe could have come back. And Fear, I don't know, how was that match for you? What did it look like? What did you think was going to happen at that moment?
So we saw the rapid heavies from Radicos clip out just as he was about to kill the next ship. I think it was either Merm Navy or was the or was I forgot what the other ship was. It was either the battlecruiser or the cruiser, but basically, as it was the Stratios, that's what it was. So he was clipping out just as the Stratios was getting into hull, and that bought time for the Nerf Ansaflexes team to get more damage into Radicos potentially and get him down before the Stratios falls. And while they were able to take him down with that Stratios as well, with no Augur to be able to rep the Stratios was just soon going to die because you had Gila drones on top of him. You had more damage coming in from the HMLs on the Cyclone fleet. So he was going to die anyway. But here we really saw kind of even though it won, we kind of saw some of the weaknesses of Rapid Heavies in lower volume tournaments, right? It didn't, because you only have one Rapid Heavy ship, it wasn't able to clip through the Augur originally. Perhaps with some more clever piloting or with some damps, the Augur could have been able to bring back up, and then all of a sudden you're not able to clip anything because the Augur is going to be able to keep people alive, right? So even though the Rapid Heavies won, I'm not completely sold on that in this tournament format.
Yeah, and we also did see something, the first boundary of our tournament. I'm glad that we got it out of the way. I think 4 matches in. Just for the audience's sake, for new viewers, Hoed, can you explain the boundary mechanics of EVE Online, the video games tournament setting?
So, you've got a cute little beacon in the middle, and if you get too far from that, you die instantly. I don't think it affects drones, so I don't think that Osprey sacrificed themselves to clear, what was it, 1 set of Gila drones, but yeah. Insta-popped, insta-killed. It's like the Abyss, except a little bit more violent.
Yes, it's a similar mechanic to the Abyss, except that you don't have a chance to be like, oh no, I've flown too far. You just instantly explode. It's 125 kilometers out of the center, and you are done. And once that happened, we did see the Abaddon, which do absolutely insane DPS, melt Radicos quite quickly. However, at the end of the day, Abaddons are very slow, and shield ships are kind of fast. I think we also saw a little bit, and we should have the fancy UI issue sorted, so you guys will be able to see it now. But we did see a lot of damps and tracking disruptors coming out on that Abaddon. Fear, like, what does that effect have on the ship?
I mean, so the first thing you have to realize about an Abaddon is that even though it's a laser ship and lasers in general have good projection, that's one of the things that they're kind of known for, is even pulse lasers hit out to a very strong optimal range, is that the Abaddon, unlike its counterpart in the Apocalypse, does not have any sort of projection bonuses whatsoever. So it only has the ability to put damage in and be tanky, but it doesn't have any innate ways to deal with tracking disruption. And with the amount of mid slots that it has, you really have to decide if you're going to even go for a sensor booster or a tracking computer to potentially counter some of these issues. So what we saw at the end there was, because it was damped, because it was tracking disrupted, he couldn't actually reach out and hit any of these other ships, because even if he had a sensor booster, his tracking disruption would mean that his optimal range was too low. And even if he had a tracking computer, well, his dams made it so he wouldn't be able to lock anyone. So with ships such as the Abaddon, and this affects high projection ships as well, but it's more apparent with these lower projection ships.
Low mid-slot.
It is just, or lower mid-slot ships, is just that it's very effective at keeping them from doing what they want to do without support. If you have support on the field, you're able to tackle things, you're able to get on top of them, and then the tracking disruption and the damps don't matter. But as we saw there, if you're 1 versus all at the end and you are in a Abaddon, you're not able to hit anything if you can't get on top of them.
Yeah, I think if they had managed to keep the Jaguar alive a little bit longer, and if he had been able to get on the Cyclone, I'm not sure. I know when I've been practicing, our battleships generally have at least some form of tackle, maybe a scram or a grapple. They might have been able to get the Cyclone, but Gila's just too strong. Took out Jaguar in almost instantly?
Yeah, and this is the power of not only just the Gila in general, with its versatility and with the fact that you can fit any missile system to it realistically. It's just medium drones are so good at application, and the most common fit for Gila is Rapid Light, which is also very good at application. So it's just a very powerful ship, and that's why we've seen quite a few bans towards the Gila in this format, because I think it's one of the linchpins alongside the Hyena for these shield kite setups.
Well, speaking of bans, we actually do have the next match coming up in about 4 minutes here, and we do have their bans in. So, I think we'll move on, chat about that one for a little bit. And what we have is Bright Side of Death going up against High Sec Miners. So both of these teams, Bright Side of Death especially, has been doing this for a very, very long time. And Bright Side has chosen to ban the Carries, the Sentinel, and the Abaddon, with High Sec Miners banning the Armageddon, the Hyena, and the Typhoon. So we're starting to get this pattern where we're seeing Carries bans every single time. But we do have some new bans here. So, Hoed, kind of talk me through these bans a little bit.
Well, I seen a ban from one side, but then the other side banning the Armageddon, so not leaving a lot of options for heavy armor battleships cores anymore. I've seen a few Dominixes. We might see a Domi here if they want to bring that out. Typhoon's banned, so we're not going to see Rapid Heavy or Torpedo Typhoon. I don't think we'll ever see a Torpedo Typhoon, unfortunately. And Hyena carries Sentinel. I think we've seen this earlier. I think the very first match. Not sure if this was the one that didn't happen, but we also had carry Sentinel Hyena banned. So people don't like E-War frigs, and I feel like the poor Kitsune is feeling left out of these bans.
Well, you are not wrong about that. Fear, do you have an idea of why we aren't seeing Kitsune bans?
Well, I mean, first of all, I have to say, as a member of the Brave tournament team, and specifically flying in the famous Alliance Open match, where we absolutely wrecked an Atana with the Griffin, I hate to see the jams not being given a whole lot of attention. But what it really boils down to in this format is that while there are fewer ships to jam and your jams are going to be more effective with that, the only Tech 2 jamming ship available to you is a Kitsune. You don't have any other of these high rolling jamming ships available, and because of that, you don't have any sort of backups for when your jams fail, or when something like a Draugr is able to get on top of you, or a Jaguar or a Jackdaw or any of these other high damage ships that can just absolutely ram through your EHP. And because you can't really have a double taunt setup, the single taunt becomes a whole lot worse in the single frigate, unless your only job is to disrupt logistics. We do see the teams coming onto the grid now. Perhaps we can talk a little bit about what we think we're going to see coming up.
We can talk about it, but I would honestly rather the super awesome commentators have an option to do so, because this is actually going to be a bit of a mirror match, which means there's all sorts of little tiny minute details that can be spoken about by them. And so I think we should just head on to the match and let the audience take a look and see what's going on.
Thanks again, Bart. Welcome back, folks. We have, just as he said, a little bit of a mirror match. For Bright Side of Death, we have Tempest, Cyclone Fleet, Gila, Osprey, Stork, Worm versus Noted Industrialist Corp, High-Sec Miners with the Tempest, Cyclone Fleet, Gila, Scythe, Bifrost, and Jaguar. Teddy, what do you see here, my friend?
It's very good, interesting mirror matchup here. However, if you look at the two Cyclone Fleet issues, they have two different weapon systems.
Do they?
The Bright Side of Death is Hamfit, and the High-Sec Miners is HML.
So they are. We've got a Bifrost diving from the High-Sec Miners team. At the same time, the Bright Side of Death team is going to pull back a little bit. They have some screening going on with that Stork down below. But again, the Tempest
ramming the Cyclone and webbing it down.
Yep, I see it. Yep, there we go. Got a little bit of incoming DPS on the Gila, a little bit of incoming DPS on the Cyclone Fleet for Bright Side of Death, who is trying to tank that.
Chunked now.
Oh yeah, he is. Jesus. So much DPS coming in from the Tempest, from the Cyclone Fleet, from those Gila drones. That is a lot.
Trying to trade with the Gila here.
Gila in about 40% shield. I don't think it's going to be such an even trade. The Cyclone Fleet is, unless he can tank through it, but they've lost almost
Gila
nothing.
might tank.
Cyclone Fleet
they're also getting DPS on that Osprey for the secondary.
They are. So the Cyclone Fleet of Bright Side of Death goes down almost immediately. The Gila now entering structure. And the Bright Side of Death's Osprey doing its best to try and stay up, having some trouble dipping into structure, and he will also go down.
This Gila
it's a lot.
It tanks so well.
It is. It's a lot to give up for a single Gila. And now Bright Side of Death is in a tough spot, very tough spot, because, you know, High-Sec Miners have they have their Logi left. They still have a ton of DPS with the Cyclone Fleet and the Tempest. These two teams, I mean, they're all right on top of each other. We've seen the Gila is pulled back just a little bit off to the side, and the Scythe doing its best to try and mitigate some of that incoming drone damage, as well as the damage from the Tempest.
Pretty hard from the Tempest, unfortunately.
Yeah, he is. Yes, he is. And he is going to drop as well. He is now into structure, and he will go down. But now, look, the Tempest, the Bright Side of Death, also in low shield. And if that drops, the only real DPS they've got left on grid is that Gila, and I just don't think it'll be enough. It definitely will not be enough.
It definitely won't be enough.
Oh, absolutely will not be enough.
The Cyclone Fleet taking a bit of damage now, but once this Tempest dies, then it's pretty much over.
Yep. I mean, they came in fast and hard. I mean, they played this aggressively. Again, we talked a little bit about this in the last match too. They had a plan. They went in almost immediately on that Cyclone to try and mitigate some of that DPS because these Cyclones are so good. But it cannot be overstated just how aggressive they were early, how they didn't back off of any of their targets. And, with these comps being the way they are, as this Gila gets ready to go down, he pops right there. With these comps the way they are, this kind of aggression I feel like is rewarded, Teddy, because you don't have as much, as you would in like a normal tournament format. You don't have the same kind of mitigation that you do elsewhere. That's why so many teams have been, trying to ban out these carries, ban out these damps, so that these aggressive plays can really be beneficial for them. We've got the Bifrost now of Thalvis Bucket Badger in low armor, going to go down. But again, Cyclone Fleet Tempest will have no trouble holding the grid, and that will be a early exit for our friends from Bright Side of Death, who played well, but again, it's just a lot of aggression, a lot of speed early on, and just we're not able to recover from it.
Yeah, it does seem that like high DPS is just a very, very good, strong team at the moment.
Yep. And all that's left now is the Worm of Bright Side of Death, and that Worm is doing his best to try and flee from those hammerheads that are hot on his ass, but it will not be enough. And here are some more hammerheads to seal the deal. And that'll do it. High-Sec Miners, once again, a noted, high-sec. It's great to see high-sec players represented in this way. Strong Industrialist Corps really do need representation in this game. It's really cool to see a group like that come through and perform so well. Who says that Care Bears can't also PvP? Certainly not me, Ted. That will do it.
Absolutely correct.
A 6-4 win for our friends from High-Sec Miners. We'll pass it back to the desk. Bart and friends, take it away.
And we saw High-Sec Miners defeat Bright Side of Death. Just for everyone's information, any team that has lost today, with the exception of the first match, which was a show match, is eliminated from this tournament. Today are a bunch of best of ones for the feeders. The main tournament is going to be much more intense, actually. We might talk about that in just a little bit. But I would like to talk about that match. So, Hoed, we kind of saw similar team comps here, but a little bit different execution. Sort of walk me through what happened there. Never mind. Apparently, the anime girl crashed his thing. Fear, same question to you.
These mirror matches are always a bit of fun, and a little bit on team comp and a little bit on execution. I think what really boiled down to there is that you see different target priorities, right? Going for a Gila versus the Cyclone Fleet issue, and I think going for the Cyclone Fleet issue is the better option. Just in terms of EHP per damage, I think it's a much more reasonable ship, or it's a much more effective ship to get off the field, and we saw that just kind of snowball in favor of High-Sec Miners.
Yeah, we did see. So I guess kind of to look into it, so that was kind of a classic shield rush sort of adapted for this meta. I think that we saw a very large amount of damage coming out here. I think, what was the weapon system on the BSOD Fleet Cyclone? Because I heard something about a mixed thing, but it actually blew up too fast for me to look at it myself.
So I forgot which team was which. One team had HMLs, the other team had hams. And in a rush setup, I always prefer the hams. So I'm going to assume, just based on the fact that it was the priority, that was the ham Cyclone. over the HML Cyclone, just because otherwise it wouldn't make a whole lot of sense to go for the priority. But once again, I did not catch which team was which on that one.
Okay, so I know that High-Sec Miners had a ham cyclone, so I'm assuming that BSOD definitely had an HML cyclone. So,
Okay,
yeah,
okay.
High-Sec Miners went like a full close-in DPS rush, and they executed it really, really well. And Hoed, are you back? Say words.
I'm back.
He's back. Excellent. Did you have any comments specifically about that? Like the question I asked you at the beginning that you wanted to talk about?
Honestly, I think just bringing heavy missiles is just the coward move here. I get it; they've got more range and the utility of them, and I guess the use cases for them is just so much more. But men and I guess women and everyone should just accept that the heavy assault missiles, polarized ideally, is the only real way of fighting honorably in these sort of rush setups.
Oh, that is a fair call. I don't know if it's necessarily the greatest of all plans, but seeing as Brightside of Death lost and did not do that, you might be onto something there. Another sort of thing we saw here is that the High-Sec Miners warped in a lot closer, and their target calling was maybe the priority of target calling was definitely different from BSOD. Fear, do you have any comments on that?
I think it really just boils down to what do you think is the most effective in these rush setups? The burden of execution isn't on how good is the individual piloting. It is, generally speaking, how good is the target calling, and what have you determined is the most effective thing to get off. I think one for the nullsec people out there, one comparison you can make with rush setups is kind of how target calling works in like capital engagements or dread brawls. You want to take off the targets in the most efficient manner possible, which means the highest DPS per the lowest HP. So by going with the lower tank high DPS ships first, you're able to more effectively take damage off the field and more effectively trade, which is exactly what we saw High-Sec Miners go for, right? They go for the Cyclone Fleet issue first, which is about the same in terms of HP as a Gila, but at the same time does more damage and has more utility and has more effective use cases. So going for that first and then backing on, and they went for Logi and then going on and moving to the Gila and then the Tempest and everything else made a whole lot of sense. Meanwhile, we saw the classic we're just going to go for whatever is the highest DPS here, and they went for the Gila, right? And that obviously, or from BSOD, and that obviously didn't work for them because the Gila has the Gila's like a Phoenix versus the Cyclone Fleet's like a Naglfar, right? It's just they both do about the same amount of damage. One ship is more effective to take off the field than the other, and that one is the Cyclone Fleet. So that initial target calling made more sense for High-Sec Miners.
Excellent. And what do you think about that, Hoed? I know you say you're flying right now. You fly small ships. What do you think about like just the target calling and the general execution of High-Sec Miners there?
Honestly, I feel like in a lot of scenarios, like trying to hit the Gila there might be better, because in my mind, a Cyclone Fleet is just substantially more tanky. And I'd be concerned about like that Gila. It depends on the fit, but the Gila is starting to clear off our small stuff, especially in this comp where we only have like you've got one Stork, you've got one Frigate, right? They had a Stork and a Worm here. Gila can, if allowed, just pretty much one-shot those almost. And those ships, while small, bring a lot of utility to the field. I mean, the Stork is your Lynx, the Worm is your Tackle.
Yes, those are definitely both Lynx and Tackle ships. Well, our next match is not going to be for about an hour. I believe that we'll be coming back on the stream at around 2040. Unfortunately, due to several teams realizing that without 6 people, you cannot actually compete, we had a few people not able to show up on their teams, so our day sort of got shortened a little bit here. And as much fun as sitting here and talking to you guys for an hour straight would be, I personally don't want to do that because I love Twitch chat, but I don't love you all that much. Is there any final things you guys? You're not reading a book. No, not after shutting your own self down there. Is there anything that Fear you want to say about that match before we kind of head over into a break?
Nah. I think we said as much as we needed to say.
What about you, Ho? And give you a last word.
I don't know how to use it, so I guess we'll just leave it at that.
Excellent. All right. So the next match that's going to be coming up will be If All Else Fails versus Third Party, by the way. I believe that we'll probably talk about that a little bit more once we get there. So we're going to head to a break. Stream should be back up at about 20:35 to 20:40. And hopefully all of you guys get some food, get some drinks, and relax for a little bit. And we will see you all in about an hour. Welcome back to day one of the Captain's Cup Feeder Extravaganza. I'm Black Bart Pirate, and I'm currently joined by Teddy and Mark Resurrectus, our wonderful commentators who were just on about an hour ago. Teddy, how are you? We're seeing you live and in person. How's it going? How are you enjoying your Captain's Cup fun?
It's very good. We've seen some good matches so far, I think.
Excellent. And Mark, you've been poking around a bit, but how are you? How are you, fantastic
True.
CSM guy?
Thank you so much, Bart. I appreciate it. I am actually not live and in person recording. I hope I've timed everything out correctly. But no, it's been great so far. I think we've done pretty well. These first days are always kind of funny. You never really know what you're going to get into on day one, and with people pulling out and teams kind of getting moved around, having a handful of cancellations in there. Things are always going to be a little bit fly by a wire, but I feel great. I feel like everybody's teams are certainly bringing their A game. We've had a lot of great matches so far early on. Looking forward to see what the second half brings, and certainly tomorrow is going to be nuts. And we have a huge schedule tomorrow. We're basically going to be going all day, so I think it's going to be great.
Yeah, tomorrow's going to be a real official EVE tournament day where we do a massive crap ton of matches and get really, really tired. I was actually waiting for you to be on specifically because I wanted to haze you a little bit. We did have a team dropout that are wormholers, by the way.
Yeah.
And you're the wormhole CSM. And apparently they dropped out because they had an important wormhole op. Can you explain to me why wormhole ops are more important than tournaments?
Yeah, I mean, wormhole hops are basically religion at this point, Bart, if I can be perfectly honest with you. Anybody who's seen my very recent slideshow I presented to CCP at our summit, they'll know that I at one point mentioned in there that wormholers are kind of like a self-propagating blood cult. And no more is that true, Bart, than on tournament days, apparently, where sometimes you just got to bash Fortizar and you can't actually show up to your match, which it's unfortunate for that team. I know they were all looking forward to it, but at the end of the day, people crave violence, Bart, and it's if you have the opportunity to go for something big, something juicy, just give it the old little bit of the old razzle dazzle. It's hard to say no. So they and there are plenty of instances like that too, where groups will have to plan accordingly. We had another team drop out earlier this morning just because a handful of folks had some stuff come up last second, and while that's unfortunate, what it does do is give a handful of other teams that we've seen here so far today maybe not an easier shot in, because they still have to play their matches, but a more direct route to day two, and then on to the rounds after that.
No, it does give a more direct route. It does help quite a bit. This is single elimination for this weekend. After this, it gets really, really crazy. There's going to be, if anybody's like a fan of pretty much any major esports nowadays, we actually are going to group stages where there are going to be, people have to win like 2 to 3 matches just to progress, but you're not out if you only lose one. So it's kind of a new thing for EVE tournaments. It's super cool. We also have, because we had some dropouts, we had to sort of do some issues, and we have a couple show matches in the afternoon here for you. Well, afternoon for us US people. Obviously, I know it's pretty late on the European side. But Teddy, so we have a match coming up of If All Else Fails versus Third Party By The Way. And allegedly Third Party By The Way may be a B team of a certain major alliance. Do you know anything about this?
Not a ton. However, we have had their bans through.
Oh, do we?
We have, yes. The bans for them is Scorpion Armageddon Sentinel and Armageddon Gila Sentinel. So talk to me a little bit about that, Eddie.
They're definitely trying to cut the head off, as Ashley was saying earlier. Just trying to stop the Armageddon. It brings a lot of newts. Stop the Scorpion. It's tanky. ECM is just horrible to deal with. And then the Sentinel just deletes T1 cruisers. So they're just solid bans.
Absolutely. And we do see some duplicate bans. Those who are Alliance tournament fans know that duplicate bans get you extra bans, but this is not the Alliance tournament. This is the Captain's Cup.
You know what else is missing from this too, Bart, is a carries ban. No carries banned in this round. First time today, I think. Obviously
It would
you've
be
still
nice
got.
to see one.
Yeah, they're still trying to take care of some E-Wars with the Sentinels. And obviously getting rid of the Gila does lock teams out of a handful of different comps. But this is interesting. We have not seen this yet.
No, this is the first time a carries has not been banned by at least one team so far today. I think Ashy actually talked about it at the beginning of the day that the carries is expected to be a very, very good ship. Teddy, can you kind of tell us about why carries is such a good ship?
It's got so many mid slots for damps, and in such a low team comp, damps is so strong. Being able to just make that T1 logi just go, no, you're not locking anything. Your lock range is 5 kilometers now. So then it has to get close, and then it gets scrammed, it gets webbed, and then it just dies to a battleship. Or you just put it on battleships, and then suddenly it can't hit any of your support. So they're so versatile, they're so useful.
Yeah, we did actually see damps and tracking disruptors used very, very well a few matches ago, and I think, Mark, you were actually casting that match where a Abaddon was made completely useless.
Yeah, I mean, the Abaddon was in a really tough spot. Anytime that your team, especially in a format like this where you're so limited on what you can actually bring to the field, right? Teams in a lot of cases will have numerous support ships to kind of bolster their heavy DPS. They'll bring a lot of webs, a lot of target painters, a lot of anti-tackle to help clear some of the screening that you see, so that their heavy DPS can get into a position where it can more thoroughly affect the match. But if you're at the very end of a match and you're left in a single Abaddon, the Abaddon is a strong ship. We saw it certainly can tank like a son of a bitch. We saw that pretty clearly at the end of that match, where it lasted almost a full 5 minutes, going down just before the last timer. But at the end of the day, without any kind of support, it was not going to touch any of those ships, and honestly, probably couldn't even lock any of those ships with how badly it was held down. So that's a tough position to be in. I've been in that position myself, both in game and in tournaments. But yeah, it's that one's tough.
Well, since we have not seen the teams land, and every time I've asked for predictions today, everybody's been cheating and looking at the comps, I'm going to skip my little order a little bit here and actually get predictions now, and then we'll talk a little bit more about this. So, Mark, who do you think is going to win between All Else Fails and Third Party?
Okay, I don't know that much about All Else Fails. I know Third Party is like the Volta seed team. And man, this is a tough one. I'm gonna give it to the Volta because the last time I was in Volta space, I dropped a rev on grid, and their Ragnarok pilot decided not to alpha me off so that we could have a good little fight. So that was fun. I'm gonna give this one to it's a Third Party, by the way.
All right, and Teddy, what are you feeling about this one?
I have some ex-court mates in Volta, so I honestly got to go for them as well.
Hell yeah,
Ex-court mates in Volta. So Twitch chat is saying that they may or may not be Volta B team or C teams. I think we're going to say that they're a Volta B or C team. This is what happens when you name your stuff. Yeah, I mean, if you name your stuff whatever you want, that is what we're going to do. That is one of the things about this.
If I'm wrong, it's because I was led to this incorrect conclusion by Mr. Ithaca Hawk. So that was probably his fault instead of my fault.
Well, unfortunately, Ithaca Hawk is dead. Long live Ithaca Hawk. But CCP Overload cannot do anything wrong.
Yes, of course.
I successfully delayed this long enough to be able to actually look at the teams. That was my secret tactic here. I know. Thank you. But unfortunately, it's not going to really help because we do have a little bit of a mirror match coming up, and so without further ado, let's bump this over to our super fantastic commentating of Alex and Dirk Statel.
All right, hey everyone, and welcome to the match today. We have got Third Party, by the way, they've brought a laser comp. We've got Abaddon, Prophecy Navy, Issue. We have got Exec Navy, Exec, and Hyena and Stork. So they're going for some projection and control. We've got the other side with If All Else Fails with a very similar comp. Abaddon, Prophecy Navy, Exec. But the low end is a little different with a Draugr and a Vengeance. So we're going to see if the Hyena can make a difference here, I think. What do you think?
This mirror match is super interesting. We've also got that Augurer, that Logi difference between the Augurer and the Executor, but they are off. We see third party, by the way, pulling back, trying to really maneuver for position.
Oh, Stork getting low.
Yeah, All Else Fails, really trying to kind of keep pushing in on them. But slowly. This is a really interesting positioning stage in the match.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's going to be interesting to see what goes down first. We're seeing damage split across that Stork, and also Debbie Spari in the Draugr, and Altain in the Executor Navy for If All Else Fails as well. Prophecy Navy Issue also seeing damage now, as well as the Hyena from third party, by the way. Damage all over the shop, but nothing really convincing just yet.
Yeah, a lot of split damage. It seems like third party's trying to pull some range, whereas If All Else Fails is kind of being more the aggressor here as far as positioning. They're right now sitting on the beacon, third party's team, the MJD, so I'm curious if they're going to end up using that to try and get into their backline, because that Augur is awfully far away from that MJD, so that might be a target that they're going to go for. Draugur's taking a lot of damage now, actually. See if they can get rid of that. It's low armor here.
That Draugur's going to go, probably, but are they going to trade it for the Hyena? Executor also seeing a lot of damage. We're entering armor with that Executor from third party, by the way, now.
Yeah, they're going for the Logi now, it seems, and that is probably going to be a good play. It's going to be hard to break some tanky armor ships. Particularly, it'll be hard to break a Hyena because of the T2 Mimitar armor resists. Laser boats are going to have real trouble breaking that. So it looks like they're aiming for the Executor at this point so they can break through the rest of the comp.
Yeah, having lost their application bonus in the Hyena, definitely you want to start thinking about how else you can manage this fight. Taking off the Logi for a start before you start losing DPS, definitely a really solid play. But we are seeing the Vengeance see damage applied now as well from If All Else Fails. If they lose that tackle as well, this could spin out of control very quickly.
Yeah, it looks like third party's trying to get rid of their low end, but maybe the Exec Navy here. Whereas If All Else Fails is definitely going for the Executor. Exec Navy entering very low armor. Wondering if the Augur can keep it up.
And again, we're kind of constantly seeing this maneuvering fight rather than huge brawls or anything. The Vengeance is coming in on what looks to be the Executor Navy issue. The Prophecy Navy issues looked as if they were tackling each other for a second there, but Ragnar from If All Else Fails has slipped away and is now being able to push in on that Executor Navy and that Abaddon kind of group. They're clumping up a little bit around that Executor in the third party, by the way, team. Maybe that's a good play, maybe not.
Yeah, it's taken them a long time to kill this Executor. I don't know if they're having issues with transmatching their damage or what, but this... Oh, it is starting to finally go down now. Oh, yep, very low in that Exec.
And meanwhile, this Augurer just seemingly cannot keep anything up for long.
Down goes the Vengeance, yep.
The Vengeance go exactly the same minute, and the Executor Navy is still, like, slowly in armor. Seeing some reps now, but...
Now that the Exec is dead, they're definitely going for the Hyena. They want that control gone off the field so that they can move around more freely.
Switch to the Augurer, though, going for that quick Logi trade if they can get it. And they might.
Third party finally deciding to shoot Logi, and it's going quick, yeah.
But the Hyena, they're going to trade the Logi for the Hyena by the looks. Hyena's
gone. There's the Hyena. That might have been the only thing holding the Exec down, but beams off of the Prophecy Navy will be able to apply anyway.
The Prophecy Navy is coming in close. I would not be surprised. Let me take a quick look. If that Prophecy Navy, there's web effects on that Augurer. The Prophecy Navy has it down.
I'm not sure if the Prophecy Navy is Pulse or Beam. It's an interesting choice to be that close if they are Beam, though. And they were kiting early in the match, so I'd be surprised if they were Pulse. He might be actually out-tracking himself and not really applying.
I wonder if it's possibly one of their only tackle options left. The Stork maybe has tackle, but he's been playing out of range the entire match. It might be that they simply needed the Prophecy to get on that Augurer, and it doesn't seem to have
Exec
helped
Navy
that
going
the Augurer
down.
is recovering.
Down goes the Exec Navy, so it looks like third party only has a couple DPS ships left. This Prophecy Navy is having real issues applying to the Augur. He's finally changed his mind, started pulling some distance to get the trans down, and just as that happens, the Augur is going into hull.
So, yeah, we're now entering a stage where both teams now no Logi on the field, the high end still intact.
We've got
This is a
Exec Navy
question of-
versus Stork difference now. I think the Exec
Is it
Navy
going
is
to make a
probably going to end up
difference?
being stronger.
Yeah, I mean, where's the difference going to land? The
I
Exec
wonder what
Navy-
utility they're getting out of this Stork, because it is an armor Stork, so there's a lot of utility mids there. I don't know what they decided to use in those mids. Is it support for their ships, or is it things like damps or TDs to harm the enemy ships?
I'd expect to see probably
Seems like a bit of both.
maybe a tracking disruptor, some sort of mix of E-War in there. Yeah, exactly. But we do see
Exec
that
Navy's
Exec
dropping
Navy
really
touching
fast.
hull.
Yeah, really, really fast. Prophecy Navy's holding on for longer than I expected with Abaddon DPS.
Split damage across both the Stork and the Prophecy. I wonder where that damage is coming from. Maybe the Execra Navy following the Stork with railguns, perhaps? While
Looks like it's going to be a pretty close trade, but that means it's going to be
And there he
Abaddon
goes.
versus Prophecy Navy and Abaddon, so it's a bit of an imbalanced situation here. I think this might be a loss for third party. We'll see.
is the what's Can I just not see drones or something? Is it drones on the Stork at this point?
There are some light drones on the Stork, yes.
But yeah, otherwise we're seeing this brawl. Prophecy Navy Abaddon versus an Abaddon basically is the deciding factor here.
Yeah, I think there's just going to be a difference in DPS race here. He's got to get through all the 90k, 100k EHP of the Prophecy Navy if they've gone for a squishier fit, and then also the entirety of the rest of the Abaddon to actually win this here. And so I think Shoaless and the Abaddon's probably going to go down first.
Arcia Elkin in the Abaddon completely untouched in this match as we hit 7 minutes in. I don't think there's enough time. Even if he could solo hit, even if Shoaless could solo hero this, I don't think there's enough time left.
Yeah, I think you might be right. I think Shoaless is probably going to actually go down before the time is up. He's entering low armor here. Stork's going to die to some Hobgoblins.
Ouch.
Well, it's a Hornet, actually. They changed him out. And yep, Shoaless is going down into hull, and so that's going to be a win for if all else fails.
Yeah, it's just a countdown to the last minute rep, but it's not enough. It's 5% structure, and there he goes. Interesting match, interesting mirror match. Very convincing performances from both teams.
Yeah, it's very good.
And on that note, we will throw it back to the desk to give you some further analysis on that.
That was probably the best match that I've seen today. Don't you think, Teddy? Oh, or Mark, whoever. That's fine.
You first, Ted. Go ahead.
Oh, just kidding.
Teddy, you're
the
muted,
classic.
my friend.
He's muted. It's fine.
You are muted.
Of course, I was muted.
No,
but yeah, honestly, that was a brilliant match. Really, really good. I loved how Arcia curved round, got the grapple on the org, and that was just the linchpin, and then it just went down. And that's their fight. It's done. It was just really good. It was a really good show on how two different plays go out, and if one was executed better, then it just wins the match.
Yeah, I do wonder too, Ted, if third party had not would not have had better luck if they'd gone after the if all else fails AUG earlier, because they did seem like they waited a long time to go. They tried a couple things early on with minimal success, then went to the Logi, then started to see some success after that. But it wasn't until then, and you're right, Arcia. I should not have doubted my fellow CSM, Arcia Elkin, and her team from Minmatar Militia. If all else fails, I'll never make that mistake again. But hell of a win for that team, honestly.
Yeah, it definitely was, and it was super interesting because they were functionally a mirror match. If you look at the entire top end was the same, with the exception of an augur versus an executor. But then we had the Draugr Vengeance versus a Stork and a Hyena. So let's see, Mark, kind of talk to me a little bit about this, like this low end, the Draugr Vengeance versus the Stork Hyena. We know which side won, but
Yeah,
even still.
it's actually funny. If you had just put it out there like that, I would not have told you straight up, because I don't like the Draugr. And in this format, it's a little bit different, because you have to have something there. Draugr is probably among the stronger options in that slot, but given the option, the Draugr is not my go-to in that case. The Stork was an interesting choice as an armor support ship. Mentioning in the middle of that match that it was an armor Stork. The Hyena, of course, obviously, whenever you're in this kind of situation, you want to go for the Hyena. Hyena offers a lot of application bonus with those long range webs. It is, and it lasted actually a lot longer than I thought it was going to. Especially with a Vengeance on the field. In my mind, if you are a Vengeance pilot, you're that Draugr pilot, you really want to nail the Hyena as soon as possible. To stop some of the heavier DPS, especially in big armor comps like this, that really rely on the tracking that you're going to get from that. I like the play here for the AUG. AUG Executor. I think the AUG has probably had obviously had the advantage in this place because we just watched the match. But if they just gone to that AUG a little bit sooner, I don't know, might have been a little bit different.
Yeah. Well, and I think this is at least this is the first match that I can think of that we've really seen tackle frigates get used, and the big one is the Vengeance here. So, Teddy, I kind of want you to like go into the Vengeance. Like, what is it good for? Why is it a good ship in tournament settings?
It's just so tanky. It's fast. It's tanky. It doesn't need tracking because it's got rockets, so you can just orbit around everything. It has a fair amount of mids as well for being an armor assault frigate. So it's just a really, really strong ship to use in this sort of scenario.
Yeah, absolutely.
To add on to that too, especially in this kind of, again, just to bring up the format again, in a 6-ship format, you typically have in the alliance format, or the AT format rather, a handful more anti-tackle that could help to screen the screening, I guess, from something like a Vengeance. You might have a couple of Jackdaws or Confessors, or I guess any of the T3Ds, honestly, or Orthros or something like that. These ships that can really put a lot of pressure. But looking at what they had, I don't know what you have on the third party team that can deal with a Vengeance. I mean, the Abaddon's not going to track it. You have to be able to grab onto it and then apply to it. And they just, the Stork maybe with light missiles, but that wasn't really what it was there for.
Yeah,
So
you pretty much have to pull off the Hyena, the Stork, and the Navy Prophecy and Exec just to get it off grid. But even then, with the ADC, you're wasting so much time.
Yeah.
And during all that time, you're only tackling a frigate when everything else is free. That can all just rush your logi, and then it's just game over.
Yeah.
Well, and that's exactly what happened. I mean, the Vengeance rushed the logi and tackled it, and they took it down, and that's kind of all it takes. Really, really good piloting on the Vengeance's part. I believe that was Emilia Delacourt. So good job there, kind of holding back until you needed to and then going in there. The other kind of big point that I sort of want to look at, just because we've been seeing them so much, is like the Navy Prophecy. What's the strengths and weaknesses of the ship?
Oh my God. I mean, it's a beast. It's so thick. I mean, the Prophecy already was strong. The Navy Prophecy just does what the Prophecy did better. Especially when you're at the end of when we got down to the end of this match and we had the Navy Prophecy versus the Abaddon, the Stork. There's an Abaddon Navy Prophecy versus the Abaddon, the Navy was it Navy Exec or the Exec at the end? Either way,
it was the Exec Navy. Yeah, it was 3 DPS ships versus 2.
As tanky as the Abaddon is, the Navy Prophecy does not feel that far off, and that's a huge hill to climb when you're in that position, especially when so much of your DPS has already been. I do not envy any of these teams trying to deal with these comps right now. again, typically you'd have a lot more heavy DPS, and the Navy Prophecy does offer some of that, but it's just
it's really strong with medium pulses as well because of its range bonus. It can get Scorch out to just so far, and it has good tracking as well, especially once you add in the drone damage.
Yeah,
that it can basically just pick off small stuff on its own.
I just realized
with
too.
the store.
I had not realized until just looking at it. You think I would know that the Prophecy Navy gets a drone speed bonus too, especially for things when we're talking about clearing off, things like vengeances and things like hyenas. Dropping lights that can move, at light speed across a fucking a field to clear, light tackle like that is a huge investment. We've talked a lot too about whether or not it's advisable to go for some of these heavier shield comps, or sorry, heavier armor comps versus maybe a shield rush or a shield kite comp. But that the Navy Prophecy offers a lot of versatility that you wouldn't get in those comps, which is really cool to see.
Indeed. Well, with that match, unfortunately, third party, by the way, will not be continuing in this tournament, as that was an elimination match. However, the next match is not. This was one of the matches where somebody decided that instead of showing up to their tournament slot that they paid Plex for, they did not show up to their tournament slot that they paid Plex for. So the prize pool continues to grow. They will not be getting a part of it. And thankfully, we have Fancy Pants and Of Essence, who we saw Of Essence earlier today, decided that they would do a show match for us. So we still get explosions. They just aren't quite as risky, I guess. You can't lose.
No, you cannot, honestly. And it's great to see, these teams come out here and perform, even if they're not, even if it's not competitive. The tournament, and we talked about this a little bit too over the last couple of months. Since the return of the AT, just having that kind of atmosphere where teams want to continue to do these matches and want to continue to have scrims and want to continue to foster this atmosphere is super cool. So yeah, I mean, even if we're not, all the matches tomorrow, obviously I'm sure we're going to be exhausted by the time it's done. But right now, I just want to see more fights, man. These are great. This is a lot of fun.
Absolutely. And for this one, we are doing actual bans. We're trying to make it as legit as possible. So the bans for this one is Armageddon, Draugr, Sentinel, and Armageddon, Sentinel, Dominix. So we have a little bit of a duplication here, but let's talk about them for a little bit here. Teddy, give me some opinions.
Definitely not wanting to see newts on this by banning out the Armageddon twice.
Yeah.
The Draugr, yeah, because it really kills small stuff. Its disintegrator is really good. The Sentinel, Missile Disruption, Tracker Disruption, it's powerful against those battleships. And then the Domi is just a strong battleship.
Yeah, it's definitely a pretty big thing. I don't think we've seen a Dominix yet, though, have we, Mark?
We have not. We have not, which is not super surprising, but Dominixes are still super strong. Offer a lot of variety for a lot of different comps. I've seen people bring, in some stranger comps, shield tank Dominixes, which is maybe inadvisable, but certainly is interesting in this case. But yeah, I mean, Ted is right. They just want you want to keep the newts off, and as we see these teams landing, we can kind of see why.
You're cheating again.
I am cheating a little bit.
That's fine. You know what? We'll do some cheater predictions, but I do want to say before we do it, huge props to Of Essence for actually doing this show match, because they are already out of the tournament, but they're still showing up to give you guys explosions. So give them a round of applause or whatever it is you guys do. That being said, Mark Resurrectus, give us a prediction with your cheater powers.
Oh yeah. Oh man, let me see. Christ. I really like the Of Essence team. I do. I like it. I like what it has to offer. It has a variety of different options here for how it can apply to, spoiler alert, a bunch of the different things that the Fancy Pants. But I do like Fancy Pants as a team. I'm still gonna go with Of Essence. But Fancy Pants is a committed tournament team. I don't know that they'll be strong.
All right. What do you think, Teddy?
I'm going Fancy Pants, I believe.
All right, I am also going Fancy Pants just because, spoiler alert, there is a shield Pulse Laser Abaddon. And with that, we're going to hand it over to Alex and Dirk again.
Hello and welcome back to the arena in this Captain's Cup show match between Fancy Pants and of Essence. Sorry. Here we have Fancy Pants in red and of Essence in blue. Fancy Pants bringing a Abaddon, a Drake Navy, a Worm, a Healer, a Bifrost, and a Scythe. Alex, you're here with me. What have we got from of Essence?
Of Essence has brought a Typhoon, CFI, Gila, Exec, Ponti, and Hyena. So we've got a missile core with armor with Hyena webs. That's a very standard comp idea, I think. Whereas the one from Fancy Pants is very not standard. What have they got that's so weird?
I mean, this is, I think, the first time we've seen the Healer Worm combo. Lots of drones going on there. Along with the Abaddon, which is typically an armor tank ship. So we've got a bunch of different, typically shield ships with an Abaddon. I'm just trying to figure out, have they done the incredible and shield tanked this Abaddon? I'm not sure.
Yeah, it might be a huge bait, and they've actually still got it armor tanked, and they're just going to use the Scythe supplementally. But right now, we have Fancy Pants going in, really hammering this Exec from the Of Essence team. It's going really low very fast.
That is done.
Yeah, that's a Dan Exec.
Are we going to see an attempt at a Logi trade as the Typhoon starts seeing damage? This Abaddon also seeing a lot of damage. It's definitely not armor tanked from what we're seeing come into it. But,
yeah, it's definitely shield tanked, which means it is almost dead now that it's in armor.
I'm gonna contradict you. I think it's hull. I think they've hull tanked this Abaddon like ballers and are baiting them into this Abaddon play while the the rest of Essence team gets demolished around them. We're seeing half armor on the Typhoon already. The Cyclone Fleet issue seeing armor damage as well, and also the Hyena.
Yeah, we've got a lot of split damage here. I'm guessing probably the Worm, and maybe if the Bifrost has missiles, are shooting the Hyena, and then some kind of split damage going on between the CFI and Typhoon. But as we speak, the Abaddon is going down, definitely not hull tanked. The Scythe is trying its best to keep its shield up, but there it goes. But it looks like they're actually going to end up trading the Typhoon and the Hyena very soon after. So it's looking like the Shield Abaddon comp might be in the lead here.
I mean, there goes the Hyena just a moment ago. This is all brawl all the way. Typhoon, like you say, gonna go down very quickly soon. Drake Navy actually starting to see damage.
Now that the Abaddon DPS is down, and I mean, it was, to be fair, as a shield Abaddon probably had 4 damage lows. Probably something like 1500 DPS is now off the field, so that Typhoon has suddenly started to mitigate quite a bit of damage with its local rep, given that they have no Logi. So it's living quite a bit longer than we expected, and the Drake is getting low here.
And
but the Scythe is still
MJD
alive.
from the Healer, by the looks, he suddenly blinked across the grid. He is trying to make some space and stay alive just that little bit longer, does not want to be in that brawl anymore, and of course doesn't need to be with those medium drones putting out so much damage as the Typhoon goes down.
Now we've got this this CFI. It is an armor CFI though, and that is going to be the squishier of the two forms, so I wouldn't be surprised if this goes down fairly quickly to the Drake Navy and Gila DPS. But the Drake Navy has entered armor, but they do still have a Scythe, so there's going to be a lot of damage mitigation coming out on that. And so we're likely going to see the Cyclone go down first, and I think that'll pretty much settle the match.
If the Cyclone goes down first, I do agree that will pretty much settle the match. I am seeing in our backroom comedy chat a suggestion that the Abaddon might have been polarized, and we talked about it being potentially shield, potentially hull. We didn't talk about the potential of polarization. What would that have meant for that Abaddon in terms of its DPS?
Definitely would mean it's probably with heat, damn near 2000 DPS, and that might explain why the Typhoon went from absolutely melting to basically locking in at low armor once the Abaddon died. It would also explain why the Abaddon died so quickly, though it definitely did have at least some shield buffer for the Scythe to rep on it. I think it was definitely a risky play, and it is kind of hoping that they won't shoot the Abaddon first, but I think a lot of comps are going to choose to shoot the Abaddon first, given that they know it is most likely shield tanked. There's not going to be a lot of active tank involved there. But
yeah, and the way it rode, charged right through the center, I was amazed. But we are now seeing this healer.
Yeah,
Just
Elvessence
solo.
definitely did not manage to kite very well. They got caught very quickly by the low end of Fancy Pants, and so they were able to lock down the armor kite comp fairly effectively for the Abaddon to just load conflag and heat right into the, I imagine, Scorch into the Logi first, and then conflag into the Typhoon later.
Yeah, we are seeing some drones from this healer focusing on something in the middle of that mess, but really it's too little, too late. He is webbed, he is tackled, he is going to go down. Joseph Ghosty in the healer.
Well, we have
trying to ride
confirmation
solo,
the Abaddon was not polarized, so it is a absolutely shield tanked Abaddon. So very unique here, but it ended up working out for them in this matchup.
Well, it didn't, but we'll leave that for the desk to talk about as we hand that back across to them. What an interesting show match right here.
Yes, to quote Dirk, the Abaddon. How did the shield Abaddon work? Well, it didn't, but it was a really great idea. And tell us about that, Mark. What is a shield Abaddon good for?
Yeah, I'll tell you what a shield Abaddon's really good for, Bart, is eating shit, but doing so in a tactically slow way. As we saw in that match, they traded the Typhoon and the Hyena, I think, for that Abaddon. Which some people would say that's not a huge shift, but once it was done afterwards, I mean, Essence team still had a Gila the in the Fleet Cyclone, but you have a strong Navy Drake on the other side, another strong healing on the other side, and the Worm Bifrost. I mean, it just with a lot of split DPS in there too, they put themselves in a tough spot after that was down. I'm sure they probably felt great when it went, but it's tough. That's a tough one.
Yeah, it definitely is. And go ahead. I'm looking at something.
I was gonna say that Abaddon brought so much time for their team. It absolutely just went down blasting. Killing, getting the Typhoon down, getting the exec down on the way in. It just wipes so much DPS off the field with the Typhoon, kill their reps. Like that entire play on its own, pretty much won them the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, it did. It was very close, and just for the audience's point of view, we did take a look at the fit. I don't think we don't have the technology to post it, but that's okay. It is a shield Abaddon. It had an MWD, a shield extender, and an invul for its tank, which is not a lot. And it had 3 heat sinks and 3 tracking computers. So overheated conflag DPS sits at about 1600, which is a very large number. And as a professional EVE mathematician, larger numbers are always better than smaller numbers.
That is true. That is true. And even with, I'll tell you this, it's an interesting play, and obviously it worked. I'm not sure if it's one most people would go to, but it's unique in that the Abaddon already has a ton of armor buffer anyway. Before you start stacking plates and resists on it, so giving it a little bit more time to get through the shield, you're still going to have to work. I mean, at a fairly decent clip to get through the armor anyway. And so while maybe you wouldn't have, obviously I don't think you're going to have the same number of hit points on that Abaddon if you just armor tanked it. But it does offer you the ability to still offer yourself a pretty decent amount of buffer for the other team to have to get through, and then you can just stack heat sinks in the lows. And you're right, it probably was a ton of DPS coming out of that thing. It was nuts.
So I'm going to ask kind of a bit of a meta-ish question to you, Teddy. But if you look at Fancy Pants' team, the Abaddon was the only not shield tanked ship on there. It was technically shield tanked, but the only unshield boner ship. If they had brought something different besides an Abaddon that maybe would have lived more than a minute, do you think that they could have won that?
I still think they I still think they could have won. The Abaddon was just a giant, like, walking, just shoot me. And it did its job. And it went down absolutely fighting, but yeah.
Yeah, it was an interesting attempt. I do love seeing off meta stuff. Unfortunately, generally it's off meta because it does not work. And just to remind it, I've been saying it a lot, but that was a show match. Fancy Pants, I believe, is still in the tournament. They haven't actually played their real match yet. Of Essence was kind enough to donate a little bit extra of their time for some more explosions, even though they are no longer with us. That being said, very, very interesting match. We did see some sort of different target calling and tackling. I think that Fancy Pants was probably one of the first teams we've seen do like a good all-in and a tackle spreading. How important is that, Mark? Like getting good tackle with this kind of stuff?
I mean, especially for comps like these, you armor comps, and in this case this is kind of an odd case because both these teams were set up to brawl from the beginning. So you weren't going to have a situation where one team was trying to create too much space from the other team. But at the same time, when you're in these situations and you don't know what the other team is field, what's really important is that you do have strong tackle in there, because if the other team can space you and you're unable to hold anything down for too long, it doesn't matter how much EHP you have. It doesn't matter how much DPS you're able to project within 20 kilometers. If they can range at like 40 and just keep space with you the whole time, you're never going to be able to kill anything. And then they can just plink and plonk here and there and pull off little things. So it is important to have that, and that's why so many teams invest so much. A lot of times, once again, back to talking about AT, invest so much in anti-tackle is because you definitely do not want to get held down, especially if you're a Logi pilot, especially if you're in sort of a mid-sized support ship, an E-War cruiser, something like that. Because especially against heavier comps, it's almost instant death, right? And in a comp like this, with formats like this, where you're so much more compact in what you have to do, good tackle may make the difference between a winning team and a team that looks great on paper but isn't quite there.
Yeah, I just realized that I did a massive faux pas. The Abaddon did actually win. Sorry, I think my brain was like rebelling against the horrible unnaturalness of a Shield Abaddon winning, which makes sense because I wrote on my notes. I was like, oh, we should talk about the fact that there's a fleet cyclone and an armor Gila, and they lost, and we should make fun of them for bringing shield ships that were armor fit and then dying horribly. And then I was like, wait, but they won. No, turns out I am just dumb. The Shield Abaddon is a winner. Shield Abaddons have a 100% win rate in the Captain's Cup. It is the best ship in the entire game. And I don't know. Like I said, the unnaturalness of the Shield Abaddon, like my brain was like, no, you cannot have this be a thing.
What they don't tell you is that the body naturally rejects the Shield Abaddon. You can try and take it inside of you, but you'll sweat it out. Even now, I can feel like sweat kind of gathering at the nape of my neck, just because the Shield Abaddon is so. It's like the body it's like naturally it feels inimical to human life. It's not right. You look at it and you say, God did not make this. This is not intended by nature. So trust me, that's not a faux pas. That's just that's a mathematical certainty right there. You cannot expose yourself to the Shield Abaddon for that long without expecting unfortunate side effects. So
well, regardless, I'm really glad we saw it. The match did not actually matter one way or another anyways. It was a show match, so I will justify that for me being horribly, horribly wrong. However, the next match is not a show match, and we will be seeing Curse Local Fauna up against MJ Dancers. And we did see Curse Local Fauna earlier today. They actually played our first show match, so thank you to them for showing up like with 10 minutes heads up and just being ready to play. We have not seen MJ Dancers yet, but what we do have are the bans from these teams. And Curse Local Fauna has banned the Raven, the Gila, and the Typhoon, where MJ Dancers has banned the Armageddon, the Cyclone Fleet Issue, and the Hyena. So, Teddy, this is the first time we've seen a Raven ban. Like, What do you think about this?
Yeah, I mean, if you throw torps on a Raven, does a lot of damage, projects really well across the arena, has a good range bonus, so it can just sit and just plink away at things, especially the other battleships as they're burning in trying to do damage, and it can really do a lot of damage before it takes any sort of significant hit itself. And then you have like the Gila. The Gila is just disgusting. It kills cruisers on its own. Typhoon again, really strong. And then obviously Cyclone Fleet, it's tanky, it's fast, has links. And then Hyena, no one wants to get webbed. So they're just absolutely solid bans. And then obviously the Armageddon, because it's just permaban, because no one wants to get neutered.
Yeah, Mark. So we're seeing basically both potential rapid heavy missile launchers platforms get banned out here because for those of you who did not read the rules super closely, which I'm sure there are many of you, you can only fly Tech 1 non-faction, non-pirate battleships in this tournament. So banning the Raven and the Typhoon does pretty much get rid of most rapid heavy missile platforms, and I guess technically the Scorpion's there, but technically the Armageddon, but the Armageddon's banned as well. So
count.
the Scorpion definitely counts.
I mean, cruiser appreciators are rejoicing right now. Battlecruiser appreciators feeling very good about not having to deal with that. Man, rapid heavies are strong. Again, I'm going to keep saying it, especially in this format where you're so limited on what you anti projection options are, where you don't have the same kind of support you might have to help you resist to a clip of a rapid heavy missile launcher, and they're still super strong. So I mean, I'm feeling good with them pulling that one off. I don't know too much about either one of these teams. I know Asar's team is probably gonna be pretty strong. Really looking forward to seeing what this one's gonna be.
Well, we do have to remember that Asar is the guy that lost a Raiju to a porpoise. So hopefully his captain ability is better than his pilot.
Yeah, that's a rough one.
I also have to haze him about that every single time. So this is now the second time I've done it. First was on the AT stage. So for what it's worth, at least only 400 people saw it this time instead of like 6,000.
That was rough. Twitch chat blowing up right now about how cold that was. Absolutely brutal attack on this man by Bart outside of the actual tournament arena. Man is catching strays unnecessarily. But not to get off of this very important point about how Asar lost a Raiju to a porpoise. It is interesting now looking at the second round of matches. We talked so much during the first half of today about how the carries was going to catch so many bans. But look at the Armageddon. I mean, it's been banned in all of the first three matches. And, people just do not want to see those newts. They really don't.
Yeah, newts are just so strong. They're so strong in a small group format. Especially with the range bonus on them, that you can just project to pretty much as soon as you get unlocked, and just absolutely just zero out that logic, and it's doing nothing. It's out the game.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's see. Okay, before I say this, don't look at your other screens because we're trying to make this interesting. But I'm gonna get predictions real quick. So Teddy, they don't have newts, but they have certain other ships that weren't banned for one of the first times here. Of these two teams, which one do you think is going to win?
I'm going to go for Curse.
And Mark, what are you thinking?
I'd be really dumb if I didn't say Curse. Even without looking at comps, that's a good competitive team. It's hard to say, but I think Curse is going to do it.
You know what? I'm going to also double and triple down on Curse because I don't see Asar on field, so I think that they're probably going to win this one. So good luck to Curse. We are going to pass this over to our casters, and I believe, let's see, I think we have new casters for this one. No, it's the same people. All right, cool. I didn't mess that part up entirely. I was too busy doing zingers. So we'll pass this over to the casters, and good luck to both teams here.
Hell yeah.
All right, hey everyone, and welcome to the next match. We have got MJ Dancers on the blue team with an Abaddon, Prophecy Navy issue, Exec Navy issue, Augur, Draugr, and Carries. What do we got on the other side?
On the other side, we have Cursed Local Fauna with Dominix, Navy Myrmidon, Stratios, Augurer, Draugr carries that drone comp with the Draugr and the carries damps.
We've got
I think this is
drones
going to be
versus
interesting.
yeah, we got drones versus gun projection. We see that the gun projection is warped at 0 with most of their comp actually, whereas the drones have warped at about 30 kilometers. So we're gonna see if yep, gun comp is burning right in, trying to get into high damage range. Looks like the Draugr is gonna try and screen here. Stratios is taking a lot of heat initially.
Dominic's sat at 0 right now, just not
Dominix has not moved.
Starting to move now, starting to move, but that was late. That was very late.
Exec Navy is
Has the
already on
Exec
top
Navy.
of it.
Right on top, exactly.
But it looks like they're going to try and get rid of it. Exec Navy taking some armor damage. Got some split damage here.
Exec
into
Navy
Prophecy as
very
well.
tackled. Prophecy Navy issue, they're trying to slow it down with that carries, but he is still burning quite well in towards that Augurer.
Looks like the MJD Draugr is trying his best to get on the Augurer of Curse, and I think he is on it. Myrmidon's trying to screen him there as best he can. Yeah, it looks like Augurer is taking some damage now.
Definitely taking some damage, but that Execra Navy from MJ Dancers is gonna go down any minute now. There he goes.
Basically,
First
the whole
blood minute in.
Basically, the whole MJD comp here just burning after the Augurer, trying their best.
We are seeing focus damage now on the Prophecy Navy issue of MJ Dancers from Curse Local Fauna, but in return, they are seeing some split damage on the Stratios and the Augurer. They are really trying to hold that Augurer down, get that kill, get that Logi kill.
Yeah, it seems like they're having issues applying some damage to this Augurer. Augurer has no Logibots on it, and it seems to be taking basically no damage. I don't know if there are TDs involved here. I'll see if I can look. But that Abaddon very evidently is not doing anything to that Augurer currently.
Also, some very interesting stuff going on with the Dominics from Curse. They are being screened off by the carries pretty effectively as they were trying to chase after the Augurer from MJ Dancers. That's a really interesting play, that the battleship is chasing Logi instead of getting into the main fight and trying to do some damage. We are about to see that Prophecy Navy from MJ Dancers go down as well, so maybe...
It would seem that the Domi has been in newt range of this AUG, and the AUG just simply hasn't been able to put out the rep power it needs to, even into such a tanky platform as the Prophecy. And meanwhile, there are in fact quite a few TDs on this Abaddon. He can simply not hit anything, especially something as hard to hit as a Tenement Augurer. And so
we just saw that Draugr go down as well. Are we going to see a clean sweep here? Maybe, because the carries has taken a huge amount of damage. This actually some really good proof about why the Dominics can be considered a really good option if you have an Armageddon ban. If you need those newts on that battleship in this format, hey, the Dominics isn't a bad choice.
Yeah, it definitely can do some work. 10 kilometers less newt range definitely hurts, but if stuff gets in too close, it's just as much power. And yeah, definitely seeing the effect of TDs on a full gun comp. Really struggled to put any damage out despite having a 1300 DPS battleship. Just really couldn't apply it. Yeah,
we're seeing the Augurer and the Abaddon really split off here. They look to both be heading towards MJD beacons. Potentially not with the Augurer, but the Abaddon taking a ton of damage on that beacon.
Abaddon looks to be going for the boundary here, actually. He's getting dangerously far away from the beacon, but I think
95 kilometers out.
I think the Draugr has tackled him here. So he's not going to be able to make it out that easily.
Okay, so in the last couple of minutes here, while we see them grind through these ships, what could they have done differently here to make it work? Is there a way we don't see this clean sweep? We potentially see a win from MJ Dancers with this comp against Curse Local Fauna?
It's definitely going to be really hard to deal with those TDs. If you try to pull range to get good tracking, then they're just going to range TD you. If you pull close to have the range, they're going to tracking TD you. So you're going to have some real issues applying to something like an Augurer. However, you're not going to have issues applying to, say, a Myrmidon. So if you've got the tackle and you've got the way to hold down a larger ship than the Augurer, then you may just be able to apply all that damage from your gunboats. And it's unlikely that an augur is going to be able to permanently hold up a ship like that. And so you may be able to shave some of that DPS off the field, and in particular some of those utility mids, and open up your damage. And so I think they actually had to go for a larger target with such a high damage comp.
So try take the Myrmidon Navy and then kind of work your way down. Potentially Myrmidon Navy, then the Dominics, and then work your way down, rather than going for that low end that we can see the damage still applied to there. Is that what you're trying to suggest?
Yeah, it's just you're simply not going to be able to apply the full force of your comp into something like an augur with all those TDs. The drone comp went for control here. They've got all those utility mids on these hulls, and they're going to have issues applying to anything with all of that. As you can see, we've got a match is over. Curse has won and is a good clean sweep.
Yeah. Absolute congratulations to Curse Local Fauna taking that clean sweep. And we will hand that back to Blackbot Pirate on the desk.
And us.
I was going to say, I was hoping you guys would say you'll hand it back to yourselves on the desk and me. Welcome back. We now have Dirk and Alex, who were your casters of the last match, here to talk about the last match that they just casted. So I'm expecting some incredibly great, awesome analysis because you guys knew every single thing that was going on there. I'm just going to hand it straight to you guys for now. I have a couple notes of my own that I want to ask, but Alex, good to see your face. And, what was some good parts about that match? What was the key there?
I think the key there was the drone comp and Curse really trying to keep their AUG from getting properly hard tackled. That's going to be the only situation where beelining for the AUG is going to work. They did a really good job screening some of those damaged ships. I saw the destroyer go in right away to tackle one of those laser boats, and so they were trying to keep their backline safe because they knew that the only way they're going to hit anything is if they can really get on top of it. And with all those TDs, range TD or tracking, it's going to be tough to do anything. So I think they did a good job splitting up the gun comp, and that's the best way to handle them with TDs. You can put your drone boats anywhere you want, hold down the enemy team, and your drones can go wherever you want them to go. And so it's much more in your advantage to have a matched lockdown with all of your tackle. I think they did a very good job doing that. And I think it'll be difficult for a laser comp to counter something like that. And I hope that they can learn from this matchup and see if they can figure out anything to counter that.
Absolutely. And Dirk, this is the first time we have seen a Dominix. I think we've talked about it a couple times throughout the day that people have the suspicion that it was going to be a good ship. Was it a good ship?
Turns out, yes. It had that really incredible high slot rank of newts. I think I mentioned it during our casting match, but if you don't have an Armageddon available with those really long range newts, if you're still looking to do armor stuff, the Dominix is a great opportunity to use utility high slots and still have that armor tank, the mid slots for your drone application, because the Dominix has that heavy drone bay. It can run 125 bandwidth of drones, which is a full bank of heavies. It could run mediums if you really want. You can mix and match. And it really does just have a huge amount of utility that I think a lot of people don't necessarily always see when they look at a Dominix. They go, oh, it's a drone boat. But they don't necessarily think about the utility prospects of an armored drone boat that can just run a full rack of control. And control in these drone comps is key.
It really is, and that is a extremely armor drone control is the one that some of the people that have been talking to me about this beforehand said they are expecting to be a top tier comp. There is a rule in this specific tournament that a lot of CCP tournaments have not had over the last few years, and it is that Tech 2 drones are allowed. So I'm going to throw you a bit of a difficult one, Alex.
Okay.
Why are Tech 2 drones so much better than Tech 1 or Tech 1 Navy faction drones?
Well, really, it's just damage. Ironically, faction ones are actually quite a bit tankier and generally apply better. And so if that's what you want, faction will be better. But if you want damage output on your comp, then you pretty much are going to go T2. And for your entire comp to be able to go from faction drones to T2, you're looking at, I have no real idea, but probably ballpark 10% to 20% more DPS out of your whole comp. And with the ability to have all those utility mids out of an armored drone comp, and bridge that gap a little bit of the DPS difference between a drone comp and a gun comp, it ends up becoming a very strong combination.
Yes, it's definitely a much higher damage increase, especially somewhere like Thunderdome, where every single person has max skills. Something you'll have in the real Eve is sometimes people don't have drone spec 5. When you have drone spec 5, it's actually 10 to 15% more damage. I believe they're a little bit faster and they might track a bit better too, but I'm just the host. I don't need to know these things. That's why I've got you
depends on
guys.
the drone. It depends on the drone. Some of them have different bonuses from being faction versus T2, so my blanket statement may have been incorrect.
I think your blanket statement was absolutely fantastic and answered the question in a far better way than anybody could have needed. Other than that, I think this is the first time there's some comments about like the control bars here. Dirk, can you explain what the control bar is and what was making it so girthy?
Right, so with the fancy UI, which is what you see on your screen during the arena segments of these tournaments, you have 3 bars for each team. You've got the attack, you've got the defense, and you've got the control bar. The attack is just a raw sum of the amount of maximum DPS that the team can put out, right? The defense bar is how much EHP they have, and then in the defense bar there's a little purple segment which accounts for active reps. So you've got overall EHP and then how much they can rep above that EHP. The control bar, in comparison, is really more a measure of how many different modules they have that will cause debuffs to the opposing team, right? So the control bar includes scrams, it includes webs, it includes newts, it includes tracking disruptors, it includes jams. Any sort of E-war or negative effect that you could apply to another team is included in the measurement of that bar. And when it comes to like an armored drone control comp, where they've got 6 mids on a Dominix, if I remember rightly, 5 mids on a Stratios, they've got the Myrmidon Navy issue, which has another 6 mids. You can stack so much offensive E-war of whatever type you want into those mid slots, and it makes you so difficult to kind of get one over on, because if Alex in the match mentioned if they go in too early or if they go in too close, they get tracking disrupted. If they try and pull range and shoot from distance, they get range disrupted. There are so many different options for control, and when you have that many mid slots to play with, and also those high slots on the Dominix, on the Myrmidon, on the Stratios, that control bar gets girthy very quickly.
Yeah, skinning girthy very quickly is a extremely good skill to have, especially in any AT situation. Alex, I think that you also made some comment about their ability to actually do any application whatsoever. I know I personally saw an Abaddon shooting Scorch and missing every single shot at a target about 30 kilometers away, which generally you would not see, but generally, like, how do you feel about these drone armor control setups? Is this a top tier setup in your idea, or your, you know what I mean? Words are hard.
I think it does very well into particularly a gun comp. So it was definitely a very tough matchup there because of that. Often gun comps can run something like a Vigilant in that cruiser slot, and if the Abaddon and the Prophecy simply stop their ship and shoot whatever the Vigilant has tackled at close, you can usually track. Into some other things, I think armored drone control can have some real issues into generally kite comps, in particular damps. Damps actually just completely counter TDs, because if you can't lock them, you can't TD them. And so if they're going to get kited, those drones are slow, those ships are slow, those drone boats with plates on them do not move very quickly. You're going to have a real hard time, pinning down a damp kite comp. And so I think it's the unique issue of trying to figure out that matchup.
Well, all that being said, we did see incredible play and incredible theory crafting from Curse Local Fauna. So Clearly, Asar is a better captain than he is a Raiju pilot. Yes, I did it again. That being said, we do have one more match for the day. It is a show match. Dirk, you have been told, or you've been called out by Sothersil. Apparently, you've been learning German. So I will say this match is Exodus versus, and you will say their name in German.
Micro jump drive experts.
That's not what their name is.
Is their name? I'll give it a shot. You know what? Sure, why not? Let me just find a spreadsheet with their full name on it, because some of our spreadsheets not quite so clear in the columns. Ich bin nicht oberflächlich. Ich habe auch hässliche Freunde. And I think I still somewhat massacred that, but we did it.
It sounded better than I would have done. So it's we're doing a show match between Exodus and I'm Not Shallow. I Have Ugly Friends as well. Twitch says you did a pretty good job, Dirk. So good job.
I'll
Sorry to
take
put
it.
you on the spot. I'm not actually sorry.
We had a translation of it earlier, and it's not springing to mind immediately. Maybe Twitch chat can help us out with the translation of what that actually means.
I'm sure they'll give us something. I don't know if it'll be what it actually means, but we do have the bans through this, and this is a show match, so obviously whichever team wins or loses, I mean, it matters because it's fun to watch, but neither of these teams will be out. In fact, Exodus is already through with their first match. They won earlier versus Nerf Ansaflexes. The bans are going to be the Armageddon, the Hyena, the Carries, and then the Carries, the Sentinel, and the Dominix. So we will not be seeing a repeat of this Dominix overpoweredness. Potentially, we'll see how it is later on. But Alex, sort of like walk me through the bans a little bit here.
So just to confirm, the first one was Armageddon, Carries, and Hyena?
That is correct. Armageddon,
Okay.
Carries, and Hyena.
Yeah, so it sounds to me like I don't really know, to be honest. The Carries ban, both of them did it. It's very common. It's really hard to lock past 10 kilometers when the enemy team's got a Carries. The Armageddon is just a general oppressive newts. I think the Dami ban on the other side is really just kind of betting on the enemy team to ban the Geddon, because I think most of the time the Geddon's going to be the superior ship. So I think they were betting on that ban and wanted to cover the other drone battleship. The Hyena ban is actually interesting, so I wonder if they think that they aren't going to be able to deal with a Hyena and they really don't want those long-range webs on them. So maybe something that can't handle a frigate very easily and would be worried about that control. All in all, I'm interested to see what these bans and what they think were necessary about those for their comp.
Indeed, it does target something that we just saw was incredibly strong. Dirk, do you have any extra thoughts that you want to add in about it real quick?
I mean, in terms of the general ban situation, I'm just taking a look at our spreadsheet. We've had 8 sets of bans submitted today. Every single one of those ban sets has included a T2 E-War frigate that is not the Kitsune. So we've seen the Carries, we've seen the Sentinel, we've seen the Hyena. Every single match has seen a ban of one of these ships. So I think that shows just how powerful teams in this tournament think that these ships are. Overall, Dominix, Armageddon, we've discussed those already, strong bans. The fact that we're seeing battleships on a battleship on each side, and then 2 of these T2 E-War frigates, that's my key takeaway from the entire ban strategy that's happened today, is that battleships, you want to control the bans to make sure that people aren't using something that you really don't want to see. But these T2 E-War frigates could be linchpins in a lot of these compositions, and people are definitely recognizing that even from the get-go. So, yeah, it'll be very interesting to see what these teams bring to the grid as and when they get there.
Excellent. Well, the teams are actually just about to land. This will be our final match for the day, though we'll talk about it maybe a little bit afterwards. So real quick, as they land, I'm sure you guys have already taken a look, and I'm sure you're cheating and trying to figure out who's going to win. I'm trying my best not to. Excellent. Then you're going to be the first one to give me a prediction.
I am going to go for the German named team that I absolutely will not try to pronounce, just because it does not have Radicos on it.
Whew. All right. That's a good as enough reason as any. Dirk, what do you think?
I have massive respect for Raiffeisen, and in the sake of time, I will not attempt to pronounce it again, but I will say that my vote is going towards Microjump Dive Experts in this match.
Excellent. And I am going to go with my vote to whichever team decided to bring a Raven. So with that, we will pass it off to our commentary team.
A little bit of horseshit there, Bart, because both these teams have Ravens. Hello again for Cosmere. We've got an interesting matchup here. We've got 2 Ravens, 1 for each team. Then Exodus has Cyclone Fleet, Gila, Osprey, Svipple, Worm versus Raven, Drake Navy, Orthrus, Osprey, Corm Navy, interesting, and Jaguar. Hode, what do you see here before we get started? Oh, he might be muted. Hode, are you muted?
Sorry, both Ravens are running around with rapid heavies. Drake looks like it also has rapid heavies. Can't 100% tell.
Yeah, what's going on with this Jag, by the way? Is right in the middle, starting way far away from the rest of his team.
And
diving
he's already burning out.
Diving immediately. Has been
Scrambly.
caught by the Svipple right out the gate. I fear he's not long for this world. That Jaguar of ugly friends is what I'm going to call this team. The Exodus Osprey taking a little bit of damage. Not too much, though. He is about halfway through his shields. Should be able to rep some of that back.
They're also hitting the Svipple at the same. Oh, Svipple gets alpha.
Jesus Christ! Svipple alpha off the grid. Svipple is just gone. Now the Raven of Ugly Friends, taking some damage now. About halfway through its shield. The Raven's going to be a thick boy. If they can chunk this early, that's going to put the our German friends in a disadvantage.
There's just so much damage going out onto the red team right now. Blue team is spreading it across a lot, but they're able to get a lot of these things into like 25% shield here.
Yeah, they really are. They really are. And it's funny you bring that up too, because it's nothing else on blue team has been touched right now.
Raven's getting touched pretty hard.
Oh, Raven's getting touched real bad. Raven is now in deep armor into structure, but again, the Exodus Worm drops the Exodus Cyclone Fleet at like 75% armor, repping up a little bit thanks to the Osprey, which did survive. But now we see the Raven in a very disadvantageous position, which is to say that it's about to die.
I think the only reason why the Cyclone right now is tanking is this Orthrus has entered reload. I think as soon as the Orthrus is out of reload, the Cyclone might be in trouble.
I agree with you.
Especially because Raven is tanking again here too. I think the other Raven has hit reload.
Yeah, Exodus.
They're both firing now.
Really in a tight spot. Where is Radicos? Radicos just chilling at the back of the fray over here, not really getting up in the mix, which is probably right where he wants to be. But now we're in a weird spot because the teams have evened up a little bit. There's not quite as much DPS now on the Ugly Friends side. But again, I say that, and the Osprey gets absolutely nuked off the map. Unreal.
Yeah, I think they aren't going to win this. With the Osprey down, even though they've got their Raven, I just don't think the Raven's going to be able to apply enough DPS to all these other ships, especially with how fast they're going to be with the Osprey.
Yep, Cyclone Fleet's going to be the next target. Cyclone Fleet will be next, and they are closing in on him. He's all held down pretty tight over there by that Corm
Navy getting chonked.
Yeah. Corm Navy eating shit is gone. That means that there is not currently any tackle on the Cyclone Fleet.
Why go for the Corm Navy, do you think? Were there just no other better targets for this Raven to shoot at?
I think the Corm Navy was holding down the Cyclone Fleet. The Corm Navy was holding him down, had him tackled. And so he had to pull. Yeah. I don't know if that was the... But again, look, the Cyclone Fleet now only taking drone damage. If he had some way to get through some of that, and able to tank those Valkyries, which are tough to tank, he may have been
both on the Jag right now. I think the Gila drones, once they get cut up here to the Jaguar, should be able to do it. Pretty good chunk. If they can get through his shield, I think he'll just be alpha'd right into.
He is. But again, now we're
ADC on.
Yeah, ADC's on. And Ugly Friends still has they still have their logi. Even if the Gila is now going to pull over there towards that, he's pulling kind of off to the side near that Osprey. Well, not near it. He's approaching, but not in a direct way, just kind of like kiting around the outside.
Gila can't really hide from anything here, though. His missile range is probably much less than the Orthus.
You're absolutely right. Damn. That's a tight spot. And the Gila, same thing's going to happen to him too. Now he's got those. He has the
chunk slowly here.
Oh yeah.
Wait for reloads on the Orthus, and then he's dead. Actually, never mind. Orthus is still shooting him. Wonder what that like half second of no damage was from. And Raven's gonna die. Probably not that slowly, considering they've still got the Drake Navy here doing a good amount of damage.
Radicus, my son. So this is a quite a turn for them. Of course, this is just a show match, folks. Don't forget. I wouldn't expect this to be too reflective of what we're going to see from this team tomorrow.
Chat did seem to have predicted this pretty well, though.
That's true. Chat, as always, very prophetic. But now this Raven is going to absolutely get cooked.
Do you think if they had gone for, like, I guess, in this comp right now, we saw two very similar things. I mean, their top of the line was identical. Do you think this came down to, like, the slight differences, like their frigate and destroyer, or do you think it was just target calling that cost them the match?
The same thing applies here that I think apply in a lot of situations like this, where you have teams that commit early to the high end, right? They go after those battleships and battle cruisers, and what they do is they don't put too much pressure on Logi, which Exodus never put too much pressure on the Osprey. The Osprey, still even now, no armor damage, no hull damage.
Yeah, this is actually a torpedo Raven. I don't know how I missed that. I think I might have accidentally clicked the same Raven twice in a row at the beginning. Scratch that. It's cruise missile.
Is it? Let me see.
I don't know. I'm getting conflicting information. I want to say it's torpedo.
I think those are
three missiles is torpedo, right?
Yeah, those are torpedoes.
I've been lied to. Gosh darn it.
These bastards. No, it's one of those things where they spend a lot of time, they spend a lot of effort early on, trying to clear off that Raven, which they were able to do. They accomplished that. But in the meantime, you don't put too much pressure on the Osprey. You don't put too much pressure on things like the Orthus. And now you've put yourself in a position where they've been able to use that same time to clear out all of your application, all of your logi. And then you end up in a situation like this. So again, Exodus knows all of this. This is not something that's going to be reflective of the work that they do the rest of our way through here. I expect they'll be just as strong tomorrow as they were earlier today. Even if I hate to see my dear sweet son Radicus go down like this, it was at least an entertaining matchup. But good play by the Ugly Friends group. Very well done.
Holding the grid with only 33 points down.
Yeah, very, very impressive. Very impressive. I think they would probably take that early Raven loss for a win like that. So we'll head back to the desk. I don't know. There will be a desk. Yeah, we're not quite finished yet. A little bit left, but thanks again. I think this is our last match. So of course, friends, thank you so much for tuning in today. We'll be back tomorrow. Once again, I am Mark Resurrectus. This is Hode Cosmere. Hode, anything to give him before we get out of here?
Guys, please start fitting more polarized weapons in these tournaments. Thank you.
Absolutely.
And with that will be our last match for the day. We'll talk about it just a little bit, mostly because there was, in fact, a missile Raven. What kind of missiles were they, Alex?
Well, Radicos was in a Torp Raven, as opposed to the other team fielding a rapid heavy missile launcher. So you've got one comp trying to get in close and one trying to run away.
That is true. And, like we said, that was a show match. So you can't really expect that to be a top tier Exodus comp. That being said, it was kind of interesting to see. Dirk, do you have any comments about the match? Kind of keeping it a little bit quick.
I thought it was a fun match, as these show matches should be. Linchpin was really Raiffeisen in the rapid heavy missile Raven rather than the Torp Raven, lasting for a total of 2 minutes under sustained damage. The key difference, I think, here was the way Micro Jump Drive experts managed to split their damage and still make kills, whereas Exodus were focusing solely on one target at one time and then moving along as they killed things. That slow damage rather than the quick kills that Micro Jump Drive experts were able to make really did, I think, lynch the match. I took a quick look at the fancy UI from the stream, and when we hit the 3-minute mark, Micro Jump Drive experts had lost that one Raven and were about to lose another ship. But they were still 5 ships against 3. They'd managed to kill 3 ships in 3 minutes against the one ship that they'd lost. It really did kind of go from there, and I think very, very strong showing from them. But also good fun from Exodus. Thank you for asking us to figure out what the hell type of missile is what in the backroom chat.
Yeah, and again, huge shout out to all the teams for doing this, but especially the ones that were willing to help us out with the show matches. Just because we did have a little bit of time to fill, and it's much more fun to fill those times with spaceship explosions than with dead space. Other than that, big shout outs to our entire referee staff, Sothersil, Amy Muff Muff, Andromeda Snow, Senior Corgi. Without them, this wouldn't go anywhere near as smooth as it does. We may have been a little bit, trying to fill some space, but they were dead on every single time. Obviously, special thanks to CCP Zealous, the artist formerly known as Ithaca Hawk, CCP Overload, and CCP Swift. Without their help, we wouldn't be able to do any of these things. All of our commentators and analysis. Obviously, we have Dirk, we have Alex, we got Ashley Trainer, Fearvine, Wingnut, Hoed, Teddy, Mark Resurrectus, Alex, and of course, thank you to all the viewers for showing up and actually watching this. Thank you to Even T staff who are not here, specifically Bay Art J, for making sure that we could use this channel, use all the things that are set up for it. Thank you for all the competitors for doing stuff, and especially thank you, Jin'taan, for doing all of the work to organize this and getting us all sorted, because without you, none of this would have happened. We will be on tomorrow at 1700, maybe a tiny bit earlier, just so we can chat a little bit, but matches start tomorrow at 1700. We have way more matches tomorrow than we had today. Show up, be there. Teams that are competing, make sure you bring all 6 of your dudes, and I will see all of you guys tomorrow.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. We will see you later on.
Shout out to Need for Feed. We'll win tomorrow.